The hammer fell at dawn, but the widow had already lost everything. Or so Vernon Talmadge thought. What the land grabber didn't know was that the drifter sleeping on Eliza Hart's porch 3 nights ago wasn't just another broke cowboy. He was Cole Drayton, cattle baron, worth more than the entire settlement of Red Hollow. And he'd just watched this woman choose dignity over survival. Now, as the auction gavel hovered, Talmadge was about to learn that some debts can't be paid in dollars, and some strangers don't forget kindness. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the night the storm brought a stranger to her door. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's begin. The sky over West Texas had turned the color of an old bruise, purple-black and swollen with the promise of violence. Eliza Hart stood on the sagging porch of her clapboard house, one hand gripping the post her late husband Samuel had set 7 years ago, the other shading her eyes against the dust that had begun to spiral in angry funnels across her 160 acres of scrubland. The wind tasted like copper and distance. She should have been inside already. The chickens were locked up, the shutters latched, the rain barrel positioned to catch what the storm would give. But something held her there, watching the horizon where the cattle trail from Red Hollow crossed her northern fence line. A feeling. The kind that made the small hairs on her forearms stand up. The kind she'd learned not to ignore during 3 years of widowhood in country that didn't forgive mistakes. That's when she saw him. A figure, dark against the bruised sky, stumbling more than walking. No horse. That was the first wrong thing. Nobody walked out here. Not unless something had gone very badly wrong. Eliza's hand dropped to the pocket of her worn calico dress where she kept Samuel's folding knife. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. She watched the figure resolve into a man, tall, lean, hat clutched in his hands instead of on his head. His vest was torn at the shoulder, and even from a distance she could see he was favoring his left leg. The first fat drops of rain hit the dust like coins on a counter. He stopped at her gate, or what passed for a gate, 2 planks wired crookedly between posts, and looked up at her. The distance between them was maybe 30 yards, but she could feel the weight of his exhaustion. "Ma'am," his voice carried over the rising wind, "I don't mean any trouble." Eliza said nothing. Men who announced they meant no trouble were often the ones who brought it. "Storm caught me 8 miles back," he gestured vaguely south. "Horse spooked at lightning, threw me into a wash. By the time I climbed out, he was gone. I've been walking since noon." Thunder rolled across the prairie, deep and resonant as a cattle stampede. The rain began in earnest, big drops that exploded on impact, turning the dust to mud in seconds. "I'm asking to sit on your porch, ma'am. Nothing more. I'll be gone by first light." Eliza studied him. His clothes were quality, or had been before the wash and the walking. The vest was wool, the shirt underneath good cotton despite the tear. His boots were custom-made, she could tell even mud-caked, but his hands hung loose at his sides, empty and open. And his eyes, even at this distance, held something she recognized. Weariness, the bone-deep kind. "There's a barn," she called back. "I'd be grateful for the porch, ma'am. I promise I'll keep to my corner." Lightning cracked close enough that she felt it in her teeth. The stranger didn't flinch, just stood there getting soaked, waiting for her decision. And maybe it was the memory of Samuel, who'd once been caught in a flash flood and survived only because a Mexican sheepherder had pulled him from a culvert. Maybe it was the simple Christian decency her mother had beaten into her alongside the alphabet. Maybe it was just that 3 years alone had taught her to read men, and this one didn't smell of whiskey or violence. "Stay on the porch," she said. "Don't try the door. I've got a shotgun inside and I know how to use it." "Yes, ma'am." She turned and went inside, throwing the bolt behind her with a metal clunk that echoed in the small house. Through the gap in the shutters, she watched him climb the 3 steps to the porch, slow and careful, like each movement cost him. He settled into the far corner, back against the wall, legs stretched out, hat in his lap. The rain sheeted down now, drumming on the tin roof like 1,000 urgent fingers. Eliza lit the lamp and sat at her kitchen table, the shotgun across her knees, and listened to the storm try to tear the world apart. "Mom." Sleep came in fits, broken by thunder and the occasional creak of wood as the stranger shifted position. Twice Eliza rose and checked the shutters. Each time she saw him in the same spot, not sleeping either, just staring out at the rain with an expression she couldn't read. By 3 in the morning, the storm had blown itself out, leaving only the steady drip-drip of water from the eaves. Eliza dozed in her chair, the shotgun's weight familiar across her legs, and when she woke, the sky through the shutter gap had gone from black to gray. Dawn. She stood, joints cracking, and unbolted the door. The porch was empty. Water stood in puddles on the worn boards. His corner was dry where he'd sat, a perfect outline. But the stranger was gone, as promised. Eliza felt a strange pang. Not disappointment exactly, but something adjacent to it. The loneliness of her life had gotten worse lately, she'd noticed. The silence louder. She was turning back inside when she heard it. Metal on metal. A rhythmic clanging from the direction of her gate. Eliza grabbed the shotgun and hurried around the side of the house, bare feet splashing through mud. The chickens set up an alarm in their coop. The morning was gray and cool, smelling of wet earth and ozone. The stranger stood at her gate with a hammer in his hand. Samuel's hammer. From the tool shed. The one she hadn't been able to look at for 2 years after his death. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The shotgun came up to her shoulder with a practiced motion. He turned, no surprise on his face, and set the hammer down carefully on the fence post. Held up his hands. "Ma'am, I apologize. I should have asked. Your gate's been hanging wrong. Noticed it last night. Thought I'd fix it before I left. Didn't mean to presume. Those are my husband's tools." "Yes, ma'am. I figured. I'll put everything back exactly as I found it." Eliza's finger rested on the trigger guard. Not the trigger. She'd learned. "My husband's dead 3 years. I'm sorry for your loss. The tools haven't been touched since." Understanding crossed his face. "Then I double apologize, ma'am. That was—" he seemed to search for the word. "Intrusive. I'll leave them be." But he'd already rehung the gate. She could see it from where she stood, plumb and true on its hinges for the first time in months. The wire had been replaced with proper fasteners. The posts braced. "You've already fixed it," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Were you planning to ask permission first?" "No, ma'am. I wasn't." He picked up his hat from where it hung on a post. "I apologize for that, too. I'm not used to—" He paused. "I'm accustomed to making decisions quickly. It's a fault." Eliza lowered the shotgun slowly, studied him in the growing light. He was younger than she'd thought, maybe 35, 40 at most. His face was weathered but handsome in a hard-edged way. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. His hands were calloused, but the nails were clean, even after yesterday's ordeal. "You have a name?" Cole Drayton, ma'am." "Where were you headed when your horse threw you, Mr. Drayton?" "Red Hollow. I have business there." "That's still 8 miles north. You planning to walk it?" "Yes, ma'am, unless I'm lucky enough to catch my horse along the way." Eliza looked at the gate, then back at him. A crazy idea was forming, the kind her mother would have called foolish, and her husband would have called practical. "You fix more than gates?" Cole's expression didn't change. "Depends on what needs fixing." "Fences. Water pump's been temperamental. Barn door sticks. Chicken coop's got a hole where something's been getting in." She paused. "I can't pay you." "Didn't ask to be paid." "I won't take charity." "No, ma'am. I don't imagine you would." He seemed to consider. "Trade, then." "I fix what needs fixing. You provide meals while I'm doing it. Fair exchange of labor." "You planning to walk to Red Hollow eventually?" "Eventually. No particular rush." That was a lie, Eliza thought. Men like him always had somewhere to be, but it was a useful lie for both of them, so she let it stand. "All right, then. You can sleep in the barn. There's an old bedroll up in the loft that's mostly mouse-free. Breakfast is at 6, dinner at noon, supper at 7. You miss a meal, you go hungry. And Mr. Drayton?" "Ma'am?" "The tools get put back exactly where you found them. Every time. Not almost exactly. Exactly." "Yes, ma'am." "And if I catch you trying the door to this house, I will shoot you. I won't aim to kill, but I won't aim to miss either." The corner of his mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. "Understood, ma'am?" "Eliza," she said. "Mrs. Hart if you prefer formality, but ma'am makes me feel like my grandmother." "Mrs. Hart, then." She nodded and turned back toward the house. the shotgun comfortable in her grip. Behind her, she heard him replace the hammer in the tool shed with careful precision, the sound of a man who understood the value of order. The first few days established a rhythm. Cole worked from sunup to well past noon, breaking only for the dinner bell Eliza rang from the porch. He started with the fence line, walking the entire perimeter with a coil of wire and a bag of staples, tightening where the posts had shifted, replacing rotted sections. Eliza watched him from the kitchen window while she kneaded bread dough, noting the methodical way he approached each task. No wasted motion, no cutting corners. The dinner table felt strange with another person at it. She'd gotten used to eating alone, reading the same 3 books she owned while she chewed her beans and cornbread. Now there was Cole across from her, eating with careful manners, wiping his mouth between bites, thanking her for the food with words that sounded genuine. "This is fine cooking, Mrs. Hart." "It's beans and bread, Mr. Drayton. Not exactly fine." "I've had worse beans and worse bread. Sometimes at the same meal." "Where was that?" He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Kansas. Winter of '79, trail camp." "You were droving cattle?" "Something like that." The non-answer hung between them. Eliza let it lie. She had her own questions she didn't want asked. On the 3rd day, he fixed the water pump. Eliza came out to find him shoulder-deep in the mechanism, his shirt off and folded neatly on the bench, muscles shifting under sun-darkened skin as he worked the rusted bolt free. There was a burn scar across his ribs, shiny and pink. Relatively recent. "How'd you get that?" The question was out before she could stop it. Cole glanced down at the scar, then back at the pump. "Branding iron. Got careless around a nervous calf." "Looks like it hurt." It did. He got the pump working, the water flowing clear and cold for the first time in months. Eliza filled 2 tin cups and handed him one. They drank in silence, standing in the shade of the house. "You run cattle, Mr. Drayton." "I have. Not currently." "But you did?" "Yes, ma'am." "Big operation?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "It was." "What happened to it?" "Sold it." He drained the cup and handed it back. "I should get to that barn door before the heat gets worse." He walked away before she could ask more questions. Eliza watched him go, the cup cool against her palm, and wondered what kind of man sold a cattle operation big enough to put that kind of guardedness in his eyes. By the end of the first week, the homestead looked better than it had since Samuel died. The gates hung true. The fences stood tight. The barn door swung smooth on oiled hinges. Cole had even patched the chicken coop, then spent an evening sitting cross-legged in the dirt, watching the hole until a raccoon emerged at dusk. He'd trapped it humanely and released it 2 miles north. "Didn't kill it?" Eliza asked. "No reason to. He was just being a raccoon. I'm the one invading his territory." That Sunday evening, no work on Sundays, Eliza had insisted, and Cole hadn't argued. They sat on the porch as the heat began to break. Eliza had brought out 2 cups of coffee, real coffee, a luxury she usually reserved for Christmas and her birthday. But it had been a good week, the best week in a long time, and some part of her wanted to mark it. Cole took the cup with both hands, inhaling the steam. "Ma'am, you didn't have to, Hush. It's Sunday." They sat in the 2 rockers Samuel had built during their first winter. The wood was smooth from years of use. The rhythm of the rockers on the boards was hypnotic. "Can I ask you something, Mrs. Hart?" Eliza tensed. Here it came, the questions about why she was alone, why she hadn't sold, why she stayed. "Why'd you let me stay that first night?" Not what she'd expected. "What do you mean?" "You didn't know me. Could have been anyone. Could have been dangerous. But you let me sit on your porch in the storm." Eliza sipped her coffee, considering. "My husband once told me about the time he got caught in a flash flood. Said he was drowning in 3 feet of muddy water when a Mexican sheep herder pulled him out. Never got the man's name, never saw him again. But Samuel said that whenever he had the chance to help someone, he thought of that herder, figured he owed the world a debt." "So you were paying his debt?" "Maybe. Or maybe I was just too tired to be afraid anymore." She looked at him. "Gets lonely out here, Mr. Drayton. Even when you're scared of people, you miss them." Cole nodded slowly. His fingers traced the rim of his cup. "I know something about that." "Do you?" More than I'd like. The sun touched the horizon, painting the scrubland gold and red. A hawk circled high above, riding the thermals. What business do you have in Red Hollow? Eliza asked. Cole's jaw worked. I'm not entirely sure anymore. That's a strange answer. It's a strange situation. He set the cup down carefully on the porch rail. I came out here to look at something, property, investments, but I think I might have been looking for the wrong things. What's the right thing? I don't know yet. He met her eyes. Maybe I'm starting to figure it out. There was something in his voice that made Eliza's chest tight. She looked away, back at the sunset, and changed the subject. There's talk in town about land assessments. Tax collectors been making rounds. Cole's posture shifted. What kind of assessments? The kind where the numbers don't make sense. Widow McCrae on the next section over. They told her she owes 3 years back taxes. But she's paid every year, same as me. Says they're claiming the amounts were wrong. That the land's worth more than was assessed. How much more? Double? Sometimes triple. Eliza's hands tightened on her cup. She can't pay. Nobody can. And there's a man, Vernon Talmadge, who keeps showing up with offers to buy. Pennies on the dollar. I know that name. Cole's voice had gone flat and hard. You do? He's the reason I'm here. The hawk above them cried out, a sharp, piercing sound. Eliza waited, but Cole didn't elaborate, just sat there with his fists clenched on the rocker's arms, staring at nothing. Mr. Drayton, I should check the horses before dark, he said abruptly, standing. Thank you for the coffee, Mrs. Hart. He was off the porch and halfway to the barn before she could respond. Eliza sat alone as the stars emerged one by one and wondered what kind of business connected a drifter to a land grabber, and whether she'd made a mistake letting him stay. Monday brought heat that shimmered off the ground in visible waves. Cole worked shirtless again, digging post holes for a new section of corral fence Eliza wanted to add. She brought him water at mid-morning and found him chest-deep in a hole, sweat cutting clean lines through the dust on his skin. You'll get sunstroke, she said. I've had worse. But he climbed out and accepted the water, drinking half the bucket before coming up for air. You don't have to kill yourself. The fence can wait. Rather stay busy. Thinking too much? He smiled without humor. Something like that. Eliza sat on the fence rail and watched him drink. You said you know Vernon Talmadge. Cole's expression closed. I know of him. That's different from knowing him. Yes, ma'am, it is. Mr. Drayton, if there's something I should know, there's nothing you should know, nothing that concerns you. He's trying to take land from people who can't afford to fight back. If you know something about that, I don't. Cole set the bucket down hard. I know he's a bastard and a thief, but I don't know specifics. And if I did, Mrs. Hart, I'd tell you. He paused. I'm not your enemy. I didn't say you were. You're thinking it, though. Eliza met his eyes. I don't know what I'm thinking about you, Mr. Drayton. You show up with no horse, expensive boots, and knowledge of land grabbers. You work like a man trying to forget something. You don't talk about where you're from or where you're going. So forgive me if I'm cautious. Cautious is smart, but not particularly trusting. Trust is overrated. The words came out bitter. They stared at each other. Heat waves danced between them. Who hurt you? Eliza asked quietly. Cole flinched like she'd slapped him. For a moment she thought he'd walk away again, but instead he sat heavily in the dirt, elbows on his knees, and spoke to the ground. Business partner. Man I'd known 15 years. We built something together from nothing. 3,000 head, 400,000 acres, contracts with the railroads. Then he started cutting corners, selling diseased cattle, bribing inspectors. I found out, confronted him, and he... Cole's hands clenched. He bought out the other investors, had me declared incompetent, took my name off everything we'd built. That's why you sold. Didn't sell. Lost it. In court. Legal theft, but theft all the same. He looked up at her. That's who I am, Mrs. Hart. A man who built an empire and lost it because he trusted the wrong person. Eliza absorbed this. And Vernon Talmadge? Was my partner's lawyer, the one who did the paperwork. Cole's smile was all edges. So yes, I know of him. And yes, I have business in Red Hollow, but it's not your business, and I'd appreciate it if you'd let it stay that way. She should have felt vindicated, should have felt her suspicions confirmed. Instead, she felt something like sadness, watching this proud man sit in the dirt of her homestead and confess his failure. All right, she said finally. I'll let it be. Cole looked surprised. Just like that? Just like that. Your past is your past, Mr. Drayton. All I care about is that my fences are straight and my pump works. She stood. But I will tell you this. If Talmadge comes here, if he tries anything, I expect you to tell me what you know, because this land is all I have left, and I won't lose it to legal theft or any other kind. Yes, ma'am. Eliza walked back to the house, feeling his eyes on her until she shut the door. That evening, she made chicken and dumplings, using one of her precious layers who'd stopped producing eggs. Cole ate 3 helpings and complimented every bite. The tension from earlier had dissipated like morning fog, leaving behind something almost comfortable. My mother used to make these, he said, sopping up gravy with bread. Haven't had them in 20 years. Where's your mother now? Gone. 12 years back. Fever. I'm sorry. She had a good life, better than she expected anyway. He smiled at some memory. She was a washerwoman in San Antonio when my father met her. He was a cavalry officer, which sounds impressive until you learn he was also a drunk and a gambler. Died broke when I was 10. How'd you end up in cattle? Started as a drover at 14, worked my way up to trail boss by 20, met my partner, ex-partner, when we were both trying to buy the same land parcel. We decided to pool our money instead of bidding against each other. His expression darkened. Worst decision I ever made. Best one too for a while. Life's like that, Eliza said. My husband and I met at a church social. He asked me to dance and stepped on my foot 3 times. I told him if he couldn't manage a simple waltz, I didn't want to waste my time. She smiled. He took dancing lessons for 6 weeks and came back. Didn't step on my foot once. Determined man. Stubborn as a mule. We fought like cats and dogs for 2 years before he proposed. Fought for 6 more after we married. Then he fell off a roof trying to fix the shingles in a windstorm and broke his neck. The words still hurt, even 3 years later. I found him at sunset. He lived until midnight, long enough to make me promise I'd keep the land. Cole's hand moved across the table, hovering near hers, but not touching. That's why you're still here. That's why I'm still here, even though it's killing me by inches. Even though I wake up every morning and look at that roof and hate him for being stupid enough to climb it in a storm. She blinked hard. Because I promised. Promises matter. They do to me. They sat in silence for a while, the lamp flame guttering between them. Outside, coyotes had started their evening chorus. Mrs. Hart, Eliza, I need to tell you something. Her stomach tightened. All right. I'm not who you think I am. I don't think you're anybody, Mr. Drayton. I don't know you well enough. That's not what I mean. He looked down at his hands. When I said I lost my business, that was true. When I said I sold it, that was incomplete. The truth is, after the court ruling, I still had assets, other properties, investments. I'm not poor, Eliza. I'm not even close to poor. The words hung there. Eliza felt something cold settle in her chest. How not poor? Rich. Very rich. I could buy Red Hollow twice over and not notice the expense. The silence stretched. The lamp flame danced. So all this, Eliza gestured at the house, the homestead beyond the walls, is what? Entertainment? A game? No, God, no. Cole leaned forward. I came here to look at properties. Talmadge represents sellers, or claims to. I was investigating whether the sales were legitimate, but then the storm hit and I lost my horse and I ended up on your porch. And he spread his hands helplessly. You let me stay. A woman alone, with every reason to be afraid. And you showed me kindness. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt like maybe I was worth something other than my money. You lied to me. I never lied. I just didn't tell you everything. That's a distinction without a difference, Mr. Drayton. I know. He stood, pushing back from the table. And I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have... He stopped, jaw working. I'll be out of the barn by morning. I've done most of the work anyway. The rest you can hire done when you sell your next eggs. He was at the door when she spoke. I haven't asked you to leave. Cole turned, hope and wariness warring on his face. No? No, because you're right. You never lied. And the work you've done here, that's been real, whether you're rich or poor. Eliza stood and began clearing the table. But Mr. Drayton, if you keep secrets from me, if you hold back things I need to know, then you will leave. Understood? Understood. And if Vernon Talmadge comes here, you tell me everything, not what you think I should know. Everything. I will. Then sit back down and finish your dinner. Those dumplings didn't survive the skillet just to get wasted. Cole sat. They ate in silence, but it was a different silence now. Heavier. Freighted with truths that couldn't be unsaid. When he left for the barn an hour later, Eliza stood at the window and watched his lantern bob across the dark yard. She thought about rich men and poor women, about promises and land and the way kindness could complicate everything. Samuel's voice echoed in her memory. Whenever you have the chance to help someone, think of that herder. But the herder hadn't been rich, the herder hadn't had ulterior motives. Or maybe he had, and Samuel just never knew. Eliza went to bed with those thoughts circling like vultures and didn't sleep well at all. But the next week passed in careful politeness. Cole continued working. He'd found a leak in the roof, ironically not far from where Samuel had fallen, and patched it methodically. But the easy conversation on the porch dried up. Eliza kept their exchanges brief. Professional, a trade of labor for meals, nothing more. She told herself it was better this way, safer. But at night, lying in the dark, she missed the sound of his voice. The stories he'd told about trail drives and cattle towns. The quiet company. On Thursday, a rider came up the trail. Eliza was hanging laundry when she saw the dust. Cole was on the roof, hammer in hand, and he spotted it too. She watched him go still, tracking the approaching horse with the focused attention of a man who'd learned to read threats at a distance. Expecting someone? He called down. No. The rider resolved into a man on a gray mare, dressed in a black suit despite the heat. As he got closer, Eliza's stomach sank. Vernon Talmadge. She'd seen him twice in town, both times at the land office. He was tall and soft-bodied, with pale hands and a smile that never reached his eyes. Behind him rode two other men, harder-looking, with guns visible on their hips. Cole climbed down from the roof fast. Mrs. Hart. Talmadge reined up at the gate Cole had fixed, his mare dancing. Lovely day. Mr. Talmadge. Eliza wiped her hands on her apron. I wasn't expecting visitors. No, I don't imagine you were. His gaze flicked to Cole, standing at the corner of the house with the hammer still in his hand. I don't believe we've met. Cole Drayton. Cole's voice was flat, giving nothing. Something flickered in Talmadge's eyes. Recognition? Surprise? It was gone too fast to read. Mr. Drayton, you're working for Mrs. Hart? Helping out. How charitable. Talmadge dismounted with the careful movements of a man unused to horses. He pulled a leather folder from his saddlebag. Mrs. Hart, I'm afraid I bring unfortunate news. The county assessor has completed his review of properties in this district, and I'm sorry to say your taxes have been reassessed. Eliza's hands fisted in her apron. I've paid my taxes. Yes, previous years were calculated at the old rate, but the land values have increased substantially. The new assessment is retroactive 3 years. He opened the folder, pulled out a paper. You owe $47, due by the end of the month. $47. Eliza's entire cash reserves were maybe $12, saved from egg sales and the butter she churned. $47 might as well be $4,000. That's ridiculous, Cole said. Land values haven't increased. They've dropped. The drought. Are you an assessor, Mr. Drayton? I'm someone who knows when numbers don't add up. Talmadge's smile went sharp. Then perhaps you should examine them more closely. The assessment is legal and binding. Mrs. Hart has 30 days to pay, or the property will be auctioned to recover the debt. He turned back to Eliza. Of course, I'm authorized to make an offer on your behalf. $10 for your deed. You'd walk away free and clear. $10 for 160 acres. Better than losing it at auction for nothing. Cole took a step forward. One of the riders shifted, hand moving toward his gun. Eliza caught Cole's arm. "I'll need to think about it," she said. "Of course, but don't wait too long, Mrs. Hart. The auction is set for the 23rd, 3 weeks from Saturday." Talmadge tucked the paper back into his folder. "I'll leave the notice with you. Good day." He remounted and rode off with his men, dust rising behind them like smoke. Eliza waited until they were out of sight before her knees buckled. Cole caught her, eased her onto the porch steps. "Breathe," he said. "Just breathe." She did, great gulping gasps that felt like drowning on dry land. $47. 3 weeks. The promise to Samuel that was going to be broken because she couldn't pay a crooked tax bill. "I can pay it," Cole said quietly. "No." Eliza shook. "No." She looked at him. "I won't take your money. I won't be bought out of my promise by charity." "It's not charity, it's exactly charity. You said it yourself. You're rich enough to buy this town twice over. What's $47 to you? Nothing. But to me, it's everything. And if I take it, then I'm just another poor widow you helped because you felt sorry for her." Tears burned her eyes. "I won't be that. I won't." Cole's jaw clenched. "Then what are you going to do?" Eliza looked at her hands. Her mother's wedding ring sat on her left hand, the only thing of value she owned besides the land. "I don't know," she whispered. They sat on the steps while the sun climbed higher and the heat built like a pressure, and neither of them had any answers at all. The days after Talmadge's visit stretched like taffy, each one longer and hotter than the last. Eliza found herself touching her mother's ring constantly, turning it on her finger until the skin beneath went raw. The gold caught the lamplight at night, while she sat at the kitchen table with a stub of pencil and a scrap of paper, doing arithmetic that never came out right. $12 saved. 47 needed. 3 weeks until the auction. Cole worked with a fury that worried her. He'd moved from the roof to the water troughs, then to reinforcing the barn foundation, finding projects where none existed. She'd catch him sometimes at sunset, standing at the fence line staring toward Red Hollow with his fists clenched, and she'd wonder what calculations he was running in his own head. They didn't speak about Talmadge. They didn't speak about the money. They moved around each other like dancers who'd forgotten the steps, careful not to touch. On the 5th day, Eliza rode into town. Red Hollow wasn't much. A main street of sun-bleached buildings, a general store, a saloon, a land office, with bars on the windows. She tied her mule outside the store and went in with her egg basket, knowing before she entered that the prices would be worse than last week. "Mrs. Hart." Thomas Webb, the store owner, looked up from his ledger with the expression of a man about to deliver bad news. "I was hoping you'd come by." "Mr. Webb." Eliza set the basket on the counter. 2 dozen eggs, carefully packed in straw. Webb lifted one, held it to the light, set it down gently. "I can give you 8 cents a dozen." Last week it had been 12 cents. "Why the drop?" "Supplies up. The Morton Ranch started selling in bulk. Undercut everyone." He spread his hands apologetically. "I'm sorry, times are tight." 16 cents for 2 dozen eggs. Not even enough for a pound of coffee. Eliza felt something crack inside her chest, a small sound like ice breaking. "I'll take it." Webb counted out the coins slowly, as if hoping she'd change her mind. "I heard about the assessment. Terrible thing. Can't believe they're going back 3 years." "Seems they can believe it just fine." "Still, if there's anything I can do and—" "Is there?" Webb's face flushed. "Well, no, I suppose not. But the sentiment stands." Eliza pocketed the coins and picked up the empty basket. At the door she paused. "Mr. Webb, has anyone else gotten reassessments?" "Half the homesteaders in the county, the widow McCrae, the Johnsons, old man Peterson, anyone who's behind on something or looks like they can't fight back." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, Mrs. Hart, there's talk Talmadge is buying up the deeds through proxies, building some kind of land company." "What would he want with hardscrabble ranches?" "Railroad's talking about a spur line through here. Southern route to El Paso. Land along the route would be worth 10, 20 times what it is now." Webb shrugged. "Of course, that's just talk." Could be nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Eliza could feel the shape of it now, the pattern. Talmadge wasn't just stealing land, he was positioning himself for a windfall. She walked out into the brutal sunshine and nearly collided with Sheriff Hale. "Mrs. Hart?" Hale was a big man gone to fat, with a badge that sat crooked on his vest and eyes that never quite met yours. "Heard you had a visit from the assessor's office. News travels fast. Small town." He shifted his weight, leather creaking. "I wanted to say, that is, I wanted you to know, the county's just doing its job. Nothing personal." "Of course not. Just taking my land because numbers on a page say they can." Hale's jaw tightened. "Now, Mrs. Hart, tell me something, Sheriff. How much is Vernon Talmadge paying you to look the other way?" The color drained from Hale's face, then flooded back red. "That's a serious accusation." "Is it? Because it seems to me the law's been mighty convenient for Mr. Talmadge lately. All these reassessments, all these auctions, and not one person questioning whether the numbers add up. The assessor's office is independent. The assessor's office is corrupt, and you know it." Eliza stepped closer, close enough to smell the whiskey on his breath despite the early hour. "But you're going to let it happen anyway, because you're either bought or scared. Which is it, Sheriff?" Hale's hand moved to his gun, not drawing but resting there. A threat. "You should be careful, Mrs. Hart, making accusations you can't prove." "I don't need to prove anything. I just need to make it to the 23rd with my dignity intact." She moved past him, shoulders back despite the fear singing in her veins. "And Sheriff, if you come to my property with an eviction notice, you'd better bring more than just yourself." She didn't look back to see his reaction, just untied her mule and rode out of town with her spine straight and her hands shaking on the reins. Cole was waiting at the gate when she got home. He took one look at her face and knew. How bad? 16 cents for 2 dozen eggs? Webb says half the county's gotten reassessments. Railroads coming through, allegedly. Talmadge is buying up deeds to resell at 10 times the price. Eliza slid off the mule, stumbled. Cole caught her elbow. "I told the sheriff I knew he was on the take." Eliza says, "I know, it was stupid, but I'm so tired of being afraid." She pulled away from him and headed for the house. "I'm going to lie down." "Wait." Cole's voice stopped her at the steps. "I need to tell you something." The tone made her turn. He stood backlit by the late sun, shadows pooling at his feet, and his expression was the most serious she'd seen. "Talmadge recognized my name." "What?" "When he was here. He knew who I was. I saw it in his eyes." Cole crossed the yard to her. "My ex-partner, the one who stole my company. His name is Robert Brennan. Talmadge was his lawyer, but he was more than that. He was the architect, the one who figured out how to use legal filings to make theft look legitimate." Eliza's mind raced. "So when you said you were here on business?" "I was trying to find evidence, proof that Brennan and Talmadge were running the same scheme in other territories. I thought if I could catch them, expose the pattern, I could get my company back, or at least make sure they didn't do it to anyone else." He laughed bitterly. "Then I ended up on your porch, and I realized the scheme's already here. They're doing it right now, to you, to everyone." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I wasn't sure. And because—" He looked away. "Because I was ashamed. I built something with Brennan, trusted him, and he used everything I taught him to become this, a land thief, a vulture." His voice cracked. "I made him, Eliza. And now he's destroying people like you. And it's my fault." The anguish in his words cut through her anger. She wanted to rage at him for withholding this, for letting her sit at the table doing impossible arithmetic while he knew the game was rigged. But looking at him now, shoulders bent under the weight of his guilt, she saw someone as trapped as she was. Just in a different kind of cage. "It's not your fault," she said quietly. "You didn't make him a thief. He chose that. I enabled him." "No, you trusted him. That's different." She climbed one step, bringing them nearly eye to eye. "But Cole, you need to decide. Are you here to settle old scores, or are you here to actually help people?" "I want to do both." "You can't. Because revenge makes you stupid, and these people, we, can't afford stupid." She held his gaze. "If you know something that can stop this, you need to tell me. All of it." No more protecting me from information because you think I can't handle it. Cole nodded slowly. All right, come inside. We need to make a plan. They sat at the kitchen table as the light failed outside. Cole spread out what he knew. Brennan had done this in Kansas, in Colorado, in New Mexico. Always the same pattern. Identify struggling landowners, use crooked assessors to create impossible tax debts, offer pennies on the dollar. Resell to railroads or mining companies for massive profits. The beauty of it, from a criminal perspective, was that it was all technically legal. The assessments were filed properly, the auctions were public, the deeds transferred cleanly. But someone's paying the assessors, Eliza said. Someone's coordinating the timing. Talmadge. Through intermediaries, shell companies. It's hard to prove, but the pattern's there if you know where to look. Cole tapped the table. In Kansas, a newspaper editor started digging. He was about to publish when his office burned down. Accident, they said. But his notes were gone. You think Talmadge would? I think Talmadge will do whatever it takes to protect this operation. It's worth hundreds of thousands, maybe millions if the railroad deal is real. Cole's expression went grim. Which means you're in danger, Eliza. Real danger. If they think you're going to fight, if they think you're talking to people, then they'll make an example of me. Yes. The word hung in the lamplight. Outside, the coyotes started their chorus. Eliza listened to them howl and thought about Samuel, who'd faced down rustlers and drought and every other hardship this land threw at him, who'd made her promise to keep the homestead no matter what. I won't sell, she said, and I can't pay $47. So what are my options? Cole was quiet for a long moment. You could take my money. We've been over this, not as charity, as a loan, with interest, proper legal papers. You pay me back when you can, even if it takes years. He leaned forward. I know you don't want to owe me, but Eliza, pride won't keep your land. The auction will happen with or without it. And what happens after I take your money? When Talmadge comes back with another assessment? Another excuse? She shook her head. You said it yourself. This is systematic. Stopping one auction won't stop the machine. No, but it buys time. For what? For us to find proof, real proof, documentation of the bribes, the shell companies, the pattern. Cole's eyes burned with something fierce. Brennan was always meticulous. He keeps records of everything, coded but traceable if you know his system. And I know his system. I helped create it. Eliza felt something shift in her chest. Not hope exactly, but something adjacent to it. You think those records exist here? Talmadge is Brennan's creature. He'll operate the same way, which means somewhere, probably in his office in Red Hollow, there's a ledger, a real one, showing who paid what to whom and when. Cole's hands flattened on the table. We get that ledger, we can take it to the territorial governor, the federal land office, hell, the newspapers in El Paso. We blow this thing wide open. That's assuming the ledger exists. It exists. And assuming we can get to it. Yes, that's the hard part. Eliza stood and paced to the window. Stars had emerged hard and bright. Her reflection looked back at her, thin, worn, afraid, but also alive in a way she hadn't been in 3 years. Samuel had told her once that the worst thing about grief wasn't the sadness. It was the numbness, the way you stopped feeling anything at all. She felt now, fear and rage and a strange electric anticipation. If I say yes, she said slowly, if I take your loan and we go after Talmadge, you understand there's no going back? He'll come after us. Both of us. I understand. And you're willing to risk that? Your money? Your safety? Possibly your life? For a widow you've known 2 weeks? Cole stood and crossed to her. In the window glass, she could see him behind her, solid and certain. I told you I came here looking for the wrong things. I was wrong. This, stopping Brennan and Talmadge, helping you keep your promise, this is exactly what I should be doing, what I should have been doing all along. Eliza turned to face him. They were close, closer than they'd been since the night she'd told him about Samuel. She could see the scar through his eyebrow, the lines at the corners of his eyes, the set of his jaw that spoke of determination and old pain. All right, she said, we do this together. Equal partners. I take the loan, you get the ledger, and whatever happens after, we face it side by side. Equal partners, Cole agreed. Nothing held back. They shook on it, his hand warm and calloused against hers, and Eliza felt the click of something falling into place. A door opening that she'd kept locked since Samuel died. She pulled back before the feeling could go any further. So how do we get into Talmadge's office? Cole smiled, and it was the first time she'd seen genuine humor in his expression. Same way Brennan used to get into locked rooms when we were starting out. We break in. Over the next week, they planned like generals preparing for battle. Cole rode into Red Hollow twice, ostensibly to ask about buying property, actually to scout Talmadge's office. It was above the land office, accessed by an exterior staircase. Locked, but Cole had learned lockpicking from a cattle thief in Abilene. The thief had reformed and become a minister, which Cole claimed proved anyone could change. The trick is to go on Sunday, Cole explained, sketching a rough map in the dirt outside the barn. Land office is closed. Most of the town's at church. Talmadge usually plays cards at the saloon Sunday afternoons. Usually? Nothing's certain, but it's our best window. He looked up at her. I'll go alone. You stay here, establish an alibi if anyone asks. Absolutely not. Eliza's equal partners, remember? Which means we both take the risk. She crossed her arms. Besides, you'll need a lookout, and I can pick a lock faster than you. Cole raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Samuel used to lose his keys constantly. I got good at getting into places without them. She smiled thinly. Guess desperation's a useful teacher. Sunday came too fast and too slow. Eliza dressed in her town clothes, a dark skirt and jacket that wouldn't show dust, and plaited her hair tight against her head. Cole wore black trousers and a dark shirt, no vest, nothing that would catch light. They looked like mourners or thieves. Maybe both. The ride to Red Hollow took 2 hours. They tethered the horses behind the abandoned livery on the edge of town and approached on foot, keeping to the alleys. The church bell was ringing, calling the faithful. Through windows they could see families gathering, Bibles in hand, children squirming in Sunday clothes. You sure about this? Cole whispered. Eliza thought about her mother's ring, still on her finger, about the promise to Samuel, about the $47 she didn't have, and the auction that was now just over a week away. I'm sure. They circled to the back of the land office. The exterior stairs were weathered wood, creaking under their weight. At the top, a door with a brass plate. Vernon Talmadge, Esquire, land agent and legal counsel. Cole knelt at the lock. Eliza watched the street below, her heart hammering so loud she was sure the whole town could hear it. A dog barked somewhere. A baby cried. The church bell stopped, leaving silence that felt thick and dangerous. Got it, Cole breathed. The lock clicked. The door swung inward on oiled hinges. They slipped inside and closed it behind them. Talmadge's office was neat to the point of obsession, desk perfectly aligned with the window, papers stacked in precise piles, pens arranged by size. A bookshelf held legal volumes and ledgers labeled by year. The air smelled of ink and leather and something else. Cologne. Expensive and cloying. Start with the desk, Cole said. I'll check the bookshelf. Eliza moved to the desk and began opening drawers. The first held stationery, the second pens and sealing wax, the third locked. She pulled her hairpin and went to work on the small lock, fingers trembling. Behind her, she could hear Cole pulling ledgers, flipping pages, muttering under his breath. The drawer lock gave. Inside, a cash box and a stack of files tied with string. Eliza lifted the files carefully, untied them. Property deeds, dozens of them. Names she recognized, McCrae, Johnson, Peterson. And there, near the bottom, Hart, her deed. Already prepared for transfer, just waiting for the auction. Eliza, Cole's voice was tight. Found it. She turned. He held a ledger bound in red leather, smaller than the others. His finger marked a page. She crossed to him and looked over his shoulder. Columns of numbers, dates, initials. And at the top of each page, a location: Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, and now Texas. Red Hollow. The entries were coded, but the pattern was clear. Payments to JH and WT and RS. Initials, probably the assessor and other officials. Larger sums marked RB, Robert Brennan, taking his cut. And threading through it all, property descriptions that matched the reassessments. Her property was there. Section 14, Township 3, 160 acres, assessed $47, purchased $10, projected resale $850. 85 times profit. Not on the land itself, but on her desperation. Eliza felt rage rise in her throat like bile. We take this to the sheriff. The sheriff's bought. Look. Cole pointed to another entry. Sheriff E.H., $50, monthly. He's on the payroll. Then the territorial governor. In Santa Fe, 4 days ride, and we'd have to prove the ledger's authentic, get Brennan or Talmadge to testify. Cole shook his head. It could take months, maybe years. Meanwhile, the auction happens, the deeds transfer, and even if we eventually win in court, the land's gone. So what do we do? Cole looked at her, then back at the ledger. We take it, copy what we need, then return it before Talmadge knows it's missing. We use the information to force him to back off, threaten to go public, to send copies to newspapers, to the federal land office, to anyone who'll listen. His jaw set. We make him scared enough to fold. And if he calls our bluff? Then we actually do it. We burn his operation to the ground and deal with the consequences. Eliza thought about this, about consequences and courage, and the difference between the two. About Samuel's promise and her mother's ring, and the choice between safety and justice. All right, start copying. They worked fast. Cole had brought paper and pencil. He copied the Texas entries while Eliza went through the desk files, making notes of property descriptions and dates. Outside, time stretched and compressed. Every sound made them freeze, boots on the stairs, voices in the street, a wagon passing. They were halfway through when they heard it. Footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate. Cole's eyes met Eliza's. She pointed to the closet. They grabbed the papers, shoved everything back approximately where it had been, and squeezed into the narrow closet among Talmadge's coats. The door closed just as the office door opened. Through the crack, Eliza could see Talmadge enter, followed by another man. Not one of the riders from before. This one was older, better dressed, distinguished looking, with silver hair and a gold watch chain. I'm telling you, Robert, the timeline's too aggressive. Talmadge's voice was tight with stress. 3 weeks isn't enough to process all the deeds. Robert Brennan. It had to be. Cole had gone rigid beside her in the closet, barely breathing. The railroad's not waiting, Brennan said. His voice was cultured, educated. The voice of a man used to being obeyed. We have a 6-month window to acquire and consolidate before they announce the route. After that, prices quadruple and we lose our advantage. I understand that, but no buts. The Hart woman's property is the keystone. Once we have that section, the rest of the parcels connect. We can package the whole corridor and sell it as a single block. Brennan moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. How much is she asking to settle? She's not. She's refusing to sell. Then force the auction. $47 is nothing. Buy it yourself if you have to. There's a complication. A man named Cole Drayton is staying on her property. He's been asking questions in town. Eliza felt Cole's hand find hers in the dark. His fingers were ice cold. Brennan turned from the window. Drayton's here? You know him? I know of him. Old business rival. Nothing to worry about. But Brennan's tone suggested otherwise. What's his interest in the woman? Unknown. But he has money. Real money. If he decides to pay her debt, he won't. Brennan's certainty was absolute. Drayton's too proud. He thinks money corrupts everything it touches. It's why I was able to take his company. He'd rather lose honorably than win dirty. He smiled. Use that. Make sure the auction's public. Let him watch her fail. He won't interfere. Talmadge nodded slowly. And if he does? Then we remind him what happened last time he crossed me. Brennan pulled out his pocket watch, checked it. I have a meeting in El Paso. Handle the auction, secure the deed. And Vernon? No more mistakes. We're too close to let sentiment or conscience get in the way now. They left together, footsteps receding down the stairs. Eliza and Cole waited in the closet for another minute, then two, making sure they were truly gone. When Cole finally pushed the door open, his face was white in the dim light. "You all right?" Eliza whispered. That was him. That was Brennan. Cole's voice shook. "He's here. He's behind all of it. And he thinks—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "He thinks I'm too proud to help you." "Are you?" Cole looked at her. "No, not anymore." They finished copying the ledger in silence, replaced everything exactly as they'd found it, and slipped out of the office like ghosts. The church service was ending as they reached the horses. Families emerged into sunshine, children running ahead, women smoothing their dresses. Normal life. Oblivious to the theft and conspiracy happening in their midst. Eliza and Cole rode hard until they were clear of town, then slowed to spare the horses. Neither spoke. The weight of what they'd learned sat between them like a third rider. Finally, as the homestead came into view, Cole broke the silence. "He's wrong, you know, Brennan, about me being too proud." "I know. I'm going to pay your debt, not as a loan, as a gift. And I'm going to do it publicly, at the auction, so Brennan knows he miscalculated." Cole's hands tightened on the reins. "I want him to see that I've changed, that I'm not the man he stole from anymore." Eliza should have argued, should have insisted on the loan terms they'd agreed to. But something in Cole's voice stopped her. This wasn't about charity or pride anymore. It was about redemption. And she understood that hunger too well to deny it. "All right," she said, "but on one condition." "What?" "After you pay the debt, after we stop the auction, we go after him, Brennan and Talmadge and everyone in their chain. We take what we copied and we make sure they never do this to anyone else." She looked at him. "Deal?" Cole smiled, and it was fierce and bright as a blade. "Deal." They rode the last mile in silence, and when they reached the gate, the one Cole had fixed that first morning, Eliza felt something settle in her chest. Not peace, not yet, but purpose. And for now, that was enough. The week before the auction crawled by like something wounded. Eliza found herself watching the calendar she'd marked on the kitchen wall, each X through a completed day feeling like a countdown to execution. Cole had grown quieter, more focused, spending his evenings in the barn with the copied ledger pages spread across an old workbench, making notes by lamplight that she wasn't supposed to see. But she saw anyway. Through the gap in the barn door, she'd watch him trace patterns in the numbers, his jaw tight with concentration, and she'd wonder what calculations ran through his mind. Whether he was planning their defense or his revenge. Whether there was even a difference anymore. On Tuesday, the Widow McCrae's auction happened. Eliza didn't go, but she heard about it from Thomas Webb when she went to town for flour. McCrae had stood on the courthouse steps and pleaded her case to an audience of neighbors too poor or too scared to help. Talmadge had bought her 120 acres for $8. The gavel had fallen before the old woman stopped crying. "She's staying with her sister in Amarillo now," Webb said, weighing out Eliza's flour with hands that shook slightly. "Left everything, furniture, chickens, her husband's grave on the property, just walked away." Eliza thought about graves and promises all the way home. Samuel was buried on a rise overlooking the western pasture, under a cottonwood he'd planted their first spring. She visited every Sunday, pulling weeds from around the simple wooden cross, talking to him about the chickens and the weather and the loneliness that never quite went away. The idea of leaving him there, of strangers owning the ground where he rested, made her physically ill. She found Cole in the yard when she returned, building something from scrap wood. As she got closer, she realized it was a sign. Simple. Precise. The words burned into the wood with careful lettering. Hart Ranch. Established 1880. Still standing. "What's this for?" she asked. Cole didn't look up from his work. "Thought you might want it at the gate. Remind people this place has a history, has a name." He set down the burning iron and met her eyes. "Has someone who won't give it up without a fight." Eliza touched the letters, still warm. "You really think we can win this?" "I think we have to try." He wiped his hands on his trousers. "I've been going through the numbers, the pattern of bribes, the timeline of acquisitions. If we can prove coordination between Brennan, Talmadge, and the assessor's office, we can make a case for fraud. Get the whole operation investigated." "How long would that take?" "Months?" maybe years. We don't have months. No, we have 4 days. Cole's expression hardened, which is why I'm going to do exactly what Brennan expects. Show up at the auction, pay your debt publicly, make a scene. He paused. But what he won't expect is what comes after. Which is? We take the evidence to every newspaper between here and Santa Fe. We file complaints with the territorial governor, the federal land office, the railroad companies themselves. We make so much noise that even if the legal system moves slowly, public opinion moves fast. Cole's hands clenched. Brennan built his reputation on appearing legitimate, on being the respectable businessman who does everything by the book. We destroy that reputation. We destroy his operation. And make enemies of some very powerful people. Yes. Eliza looked at the sign again, still standing. Samuel had built this place with his bare hands and his stubbornness and his absolute refusal to quit even when quitting made sense. She'd promised to honor that. But maybe honoring it didn't mean just surviving. Maybe it meant fighting back. All right, she said, we do it your way. You pay the debt, we go public with everything. She turned to face him. But Cole, if this goes wrong, if Brennan comes after us, he will come after us. That's not an if, it's a when. Cole's voice was steady. But we'll be ready. Wednesday brought a visitor neither of them expected. Eliza was hanging laundry when she heard the wagon, and her first thought was Talmadge returning with more demands. But as the vehicle came into focus, she recognized it, the Johnson family's buckboard, driven by Martha Johnson herself with her 3 children bouncing in the back. Cole emerged from the barn, hammer still in his hand, as Martha pulled up at the gate. Mrs. Hart. Martha was a raw-boned woman with capable hands and eyes that had seen too much hardship too young. Hope I'm not intruding. Not at all. What brings you out here? Martha climbed down from the wagon, reached into the bed and pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle. Heard about your auction Saturday. Heard you were planning to fight it. She thrust the bundle at Eliza. This is from me and John and the kids. It's not much. $7 we had saved for seed, but we figured, her voice cracked, we figured if you can stand up to them, maybe the rest of us can too. Eliza unwrapped the bundle with trembling fingers. Bills and coins, carefully counted, $7, a fortune for a family barely scraping by. Martha, I can't take this. You can, and you will. Martha's jaw set with determination that reminded Eliza of herself. We got our reassessment last week, $63. We can't pay it, but maybe if you beat them on yours, it'll slow them down. Give us time to figure something out. She glanced at Cole. Webb says you got help. That true? Yes, ma'am, Cole said quietly. It's true. Then maybe there's hope after all. Martha climbed back onto the wagon. You fight them hard, Mrs. Hart. For all of us. She drove away before Eliza could respond, leaving behind $7 and the weight of an entire community's desperation. Cole came to stand beside her. You can't take their money. I know. It's probably everything they have. I know. Eliza rewrapped the bundle carefully. But refusing it would shame them, would make them feel like their help isn't good enough. So I'll take it, and I'll give it back after the auction, and I'll never tell them I did. She looked at him. That work for you? Cole's expression softened. You're something else, Eliza Hart. I'm just tired of watching good people suffer while bad ones profit. She tucked the bundle into her apron pocket. How much do you have set aside for Saturday? Enough to cover the debt 10 times over. Show me. Cole hesitated, then led her to the barn. From a gap in the floorboards beneath the workbench, he pulled a leather satchel. Inside, banded stacks of bills. More money than Eliza had seen in her entire life. This is what I brought from Santa Fe, Cole explained. I was planning to use it to buy properties from Talmadge, trace the ownership chain, prove the fraud from the inside, but he shrugged. Plans change. Eliza touched one of the stacks, feeling the crisp paper. How much is here? $5,000. She jerked her hand back like the money had burned her. I know, it's obscene, especially compared to what people like the Johnsons are living on. Cole closed the satchel. But it's leverage, and right now, leverage is what we need. Thursday, Sheriff Hale came calling. Eliza was in the garden pulling carrots when she heard the horse. Cole was on the roof again. He'd found loose shingles and insisted on fixing them despite the heat, and he called down a warning. "Rider coming! Law!" Eliza straightened, wiped her hands on her apron, and waited. Hale rode up slow and deliberate, telegraphing that this was official business. He dismounted heavily, hand resting on his gun belt. "Mrs. Hart, Mr. Drayton!" Cole climbed down from the roof, his movements unhurried but alert. He positioned himself between Eliza and the sheriff without making it obvious. "Sheriff," Eliza said, "what can I do for you?" "Just wanted to make sure you're aware the auction's set for Saturday morning, 10 o'clock sharp at the courthouse." Hale pulled a paper from his vest. "This is your official notice. You're required to be present or forfeit any claim to the property." Eliza took the notice. The words swam before her eyes, legal language designed to confuse and intimidate. At the bottom, Talmadge's signature and the county seal. "I'll be there," she said. "Good. That's good." Hale shifted his weight. "Mrs. Hart, I want you to understand, this isn't personal. I'm just doing my job." "Your job is to protect people, Sheriff, not help thieves steal their land." Color flooded Hale's face. "Now you listen here." "No, you listen." Cole's voice was quiet, but it cut like a blade. "I know you're taking money from Talmadge, $50 a month to look the other way while he and Brennan run their scheme. I know because I've seen the ledger. I have copies." Hale's hand moved to his gun. "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's a fact." Cole descended the last two rungs of the ladder and faced the sheriff directly. "And come Monday, those copies are going to the territorial governor, the federal marshal, and every newspaper that will print them. You'll be finished, Hale. Not just as sheriff. You'll be lucky to avoid prison." The silence stretched taut as wire. Eliza's hand moved to her pocket where she kept Samuel's knife, fingers closing around the worn handle. Finally, Hale spoke, his voice thick with something between fear and fury. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. But it'll be my mistake, not Brennan's puppet." Cole crossed his arms. "You want to draw that gun, Sheriff? Go ahead. But know that if you do, there's a dozen people in Red Hollow who know where we got that ledger. And if something happens to us, they'll make sure it gets out anyway. So ask yourself, is $50 a month worth that?" Hale's jaw worked. His hand hovered over the gun for another heartbeat, then dropped. "This isn't over." "No," Cole agreed. "It's not. But it's going to end very differently than you expected." The sheriff remounted without another word and rode off, back straight with wounded pride and barely contained rage. Eliza waited until he was out of sight before she started shaking. Cole caught her elbow, steadied her. "That was incredibly stupid," she managed. "Probably. He could have shot you." "He could have, but he didn't." Cole guided her to the porch steps, sat her down. "Hale's not a killer, Eliza. He's a coward and a thief, but he's not willing to commit murder. And now he knows we have evidence. Which means he has to choose. Keep taking Brennan's money and risk prison, or cut his losses and distance himself. You think he'll back off? I think he'll panic, and panicked men make mistakes." Cole sat beside her. "We just have to make sure we're ready when he does." Friday evening arrived too fast. Eliza tried to sleep but couldn't, finally giving up around midnight and going to sit on the porch. The stars were fierce overhead, unbothered by human schemes and desperation. She was tracing constellations Samuel had taught her when she heard the barn door open. Cole crossed the yard carrying 2 cups. He handed her one, coffee, real coffee, probably from his own supplies. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. "Kept thinking about tomorrow." "Try not to. It'll make you crazy." "Too late." Eliza sipped the coffee, savoring the warmth. "Cole, what happens if Brennan doesn't back down? If paying the debt just makes him angrier?" "Then we follow through, release the evidence, file the complaints, make his life hell." Cole stared out at the dark prairie. "I won't lie to you, Eliza. This could get ugly. Brennan's not a man who accepts defeat gracefully." "What did he do to you after he took your company?" Cole was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "He tried to destroy me completely. Spread rumors I was embezzling, that I'd cheated investors, that I was unstable. Made it impossible for me to get credit or start over. I spent a year fighting just to clear my name. And even now, there are people who believe his version." His hands tightened on the cup. That's why this matters so much. Not just stopping him here, but proving he's the criminal, rewriting the story. Revenge, Eliza said softly. Justice. Sometimes they're the same thing. And sometimes they're not. I'm still figuring out which this is. Cole turned to look at her. But I know this. Helping you keep your promise, helping people like the Johnsons keep their land, that's worth doing regardless of what it does to Brennan. So even if it is revenge, at least it's useful revenge. Eliza smiled despite herself. That's some impressive rationalization. I've had practice. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee and watching the stars wheel overhead. Finally, Eliza said, "Thank you for all of this, for staying, for fighting, for caring about a stranger's homestead. You're not a stranger anymore." "No, I suppose I'm not." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been building for days. "What happens after? Assuming we win, assuming Brennan backs off, what then? What do you want to happen?" Eliza looked at him, this man who'd appeared out of a storm and turned her world sideways, who'd fixed her fences and learned her stories and made her feel less alone than she'd been in 3 years, who was willing to fight her battles even when they weren't really his. "I don't know," she admitted. "I haven't let myself think that far." "Fair enough." Cole set down his cup and stood. "But when you do figure it out, I hope you'll tell me, because whatever you decide, I'd like to be part of it, if you'll have me." He walked back to the barn before she could respond, leaving her alone with the stars and the pounding of her heart and a hope so fragile she was afraid to touch it. Saturday morning dawned clear and hot, the kind of day that promised temperatures over 100 by noon. Eliza dressed in her best clothes, a blue calico dress that had been her mother's, carefully mended and pressed. She twisted her hair into a bun and fixed it with her mother's silver combs. In the mirror, she looked like a woman going to church or a funeral. Maybe both. Cole wore a suit she'd never seen before, pulled from his saddlebags and somehow still crisp despite weeks in the barn. He looked like a different person, wealthy, powerful, dangerous in a way his work clothes had hidden. It reminded her that she still didn't really know who he was, what he'd been before the storm brought him here. They rode to Red Hollow in silence, the satchel of money wrapped in canvas and tied to Cole's saddle. The town square was already crowded when they arrived. News of the auction had spread, drawing not just locals but people from neighboring settlements. Some came to bid. Most came to watch. The courthouse steps served as the auction platform. Talmadge stood there with the county clerk and a gavel, looking satisfied and sleek as a fed cat. Behind him, watching from the courthouse doorway, stood a man Eliza had never seen but somehow knew on sight. Robert Brennan. He was everything Talmadge wasn't. Distinguished, handsome, wearing his expensive suit like armor. His silver hair caught the sunlight. His expression was mild, almost bored, as if this was merely another day's business. But his eyes, when they found Cole in the crowd, went sharp and cold as flint. Cole saw him too. Eliza felt him go rigid beside her. "You all right?" she whispered. "No, but I will be." Cole's jaw set. "Stay close. This is about to get interesting." Talmadge banged the gavel, calling for order. The crowd pressed closer, people jostling for position. Eliza saw familiar faces. Thomas Webb from the store, the Johnsons standing in back with their children, Sheriff Hale at the edge, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Ladies and gentlemen," Talmadge called out, "we're here for the auction of property owned by Mrs. Eliza Hart, Section 14, Township 3, 160 acres, to satisfy a tax debt of $47. Do I have an opening bid?" Before anyone could speak, Cole stepped forward. "I'll pay the debt." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Talmadge's smile didn't waver. "I'm sorry, Mr. Drayton, Cole Drayton, and I said I'll pay Mrs. Hart's debt, $47 in full, right now." "I'm afraid that's not how this works, Mr. Drayton. The property must be auctioned." "No." Cole's voice cut through the square like a gunshot. "The property goes to auction only if the debt isn't satisfied. Texas Property Law, Section 12, Subsection 4. If the debt is paid before the gavel falls on the first bid, the auction is nullified." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. I have a cashier's note from the El Paso Trust Bank for the full amount, plus late fees plus court costs, $53 total. Talmadge's face went mottled red. This is highly irregular. It's completely legal, and you know it. Cole mounted the steps and handed the note to the county clerk, who examined it with wide eyes. It's legitimate, the clerk said quietly. Drawn on El Paso Trust, certified yesterday. Then the debt is satisfied. Cole turned to face the crowd. Mrs. Hart keeps her land. This auction is over. For a moment, nobody moved. Then someone in the back, John Johnson, Eliza realized, started clapping. Others joined in. Not everyone, but enough. A scattering of applause that sounded like defiance. Talmadge's hand moved to grab Cole's arm. Now, you wait just a minute. Don't touch me. Cole's voice dropped to something dangerous. Unless you want everyone here to know exactly how you and Brennan have been running your scheme. How you've been bribing assessors, filing false liens, stealing land from people too poor to fight back. The applause stopped. The crowd went silent. Brennan stepped out of the courthouse doorway. Cole? His voice was warm, almost friendly. This is quite the dramatic gesture. Very unlike you. People change, Robert. Apparently, Brennan descended the steps with the easy confidence of a man who owned the world. Though I have to wonder, what's your interest in this woman's land? Surely it's not the property itself. 160 acres of scrub isn't worth your time. It's worth her time. That's enough. How noble. The great Cole Drayton, defender of widows. Brennan's smile was all teeth. Tell me, do you know anything about a break-in at Mr. Talmadge's office last Sunday? Someone picked the lock, went through his files. Nothing taken, but quite the violation. Cole didn't blink. No idea what you're talking about. Of course not. Just like you have no idea about certain allegations being made. Accusations of bribery and fraud, completely unfounded, naturally, but damaging nonetheless. Brennan's eyes glittered. You always were good at making trouble, Cole. It's why I had to remove you from our partnership. Too much conscience, too much pride. Not enough understanding that business requires flexibility. You mean corruption? I mean pragmatism. Brennan glanced at Eliza, his gaze dismissive. Mrs. Hart, I'll give you $100 for your deed right now, 10 times what Talmadge offered. You can walk away, start over somewhere else, and avoid all the unpleasantness that's about to descend on anyone foolish enough to oppose us. Eliza had been silent through all of this, watching the two men circle each other like wolves. Now she stepped forward. No. I'm sorry? I said no. My husband built this ranch. He's buried there. I promised him I'd keep it, and I will. So you can take your $100 and... She paused, searching for words that would match the fury in her chest. And you can go straight to hell with it. Someone in the crowd laughed. Brennan's expression went cold. Mrs. Hart, I don't think you understand the situation. I understand perfectly. You're a thief hiding behind legal documents. You've been stealing land all over the territory, ruining families, destroying lives, all so you can resell to the railroad and make a fortune. Eliza's voice rose. Well, not here, not my land, and if I have anything to say about it, not anyone else's either. She reached into her bag and pulled out the papers they'd copied from Talmadge's ledger. These are records of your bribes, your shell companies, your whole operation. And as of Monday morning, copies go to the territorial governor, the federal land office, and every newspaper between here and Denver. The crowd erupted. Questions, exclamations, people pressing forward to see the papers. Sheriff Hale tried to push through, hand on his gun, but the bodies were too thick, too agitated. Brennan's mask finally cracked. Those are stolen documents, obtained illegally. Then I guess you'll have to prove that in court, Cole said, along with proving the contents are false, which will be difficult, considering they match payment records from Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico. Same pattern, same amounts, same initials. He smiled. I kept very good records when we were partners, Robert. I know your methods. I helped create them, and now I'm going to use them to destroy you. Brennan's hand shot out and grabbed Cole's jacket. You self-righteous... Cole's fist caught Brennan in the jaw, a short, hard punch that snapped his head back and sent him stumbling into Talmadge. The crowd scattered. Someone screamed. Sheriff Hale finally broke through, gun drawn. "That's enough!" Hale's voice cracked with panic. "Everyone calm down!" But nobody was calm. The square had erupted into chaos, people shouting questions, demanding answers. The Johnsons were pointing at Eliza's papers. Webb was yelling something about his own reassessment. Brennan was back on his feet, wiping blood from his split lip, his expression murderous. "You just assaulted me in front of witnesses," Brennan said. "I'll have you arrested. Try it." Cole's voice was level, despite the fury in his eyes. "But if you do, this becomes a public trial, with evidence, with testimony, with everything you've done exposed in open court." He leaned closer. "Is that really what you want, Robert? Because I'm ready. I've been ready for 2 years." Brennan stared at him, chest heaving, blood on his chin. For the first time since Eliza had seen him, he looked uncertain. Talmadge grabbed his arm. "Robert, we should go. We need to do nothing." Brennan shook him off. He straightened his jacket, wiped his mouth with a handkerchief, and looked at Eliza with cold calculation. "You think you've won something here today, Mrs. Hart. You haven't. You've just made a very powerful enemy." "I already had one," Eliza said. "Now I'm just making it public." Brennan turned and walked away, Talmadge scurrying behind him. The crowd parted for them like water, then immediately closed again, buzzing with speculation and outrage. Sheriff Hale holstered his gun. "This isn't over, Sitor," he said to no one in particular, then followed Brennan and Talmadge. Eliza's legs finally gave out. Cole caught her, eased her onto the courthouse steps. Someone brought water. The Johnsons pushed through with questions. Webb wanted to see the papers. People were talking all at once, a cacophony of fear and hope and anger all mixed together. Cole raised his hands for quiet. "Listen. Everyone listen. What happened here today? This is just the start. Brennan and Talmadge aren't going to back down easy. They're going to fight. Maybe get violent. So anyone who's been reassessed, anyone who's facing an auction, I need you to document everything. Keep copies of your notices, your payment records, anything that shows the numbers don't add up." "What good will that do?" someone called out. "It'll give us ammunition, evidence. The more we have, the harder it is for them to dismiss this as one disgruntled widow making accusations." Cole looked around the crowd. "This is bigger than Mrs. Hart's land. This is about all of you, about making sure no one else loses their home to legal theft." "And who made you the leader?" The question came from a man Eliza didn't recognize, standing at the back with his arms crossed. "Nobody. But I'm the one with the resources to fight back, the money to hire lawyers, to buy advertising and papers, to make enough noise that someone has to pay attention." Cole's voice hardened. "So you can trust me or not. But right now, I'm the best chance you've got." The crowd murmured, uncertain. Then Martha Johnson spoke up. "He's right. We got nothing to lose at this point. They've already decided to take our land. Might as well go down fighting." Others nodded, voiced agreement. And slowly, reluctantly, the crowd shifted from scared observers to something that looked almost like an army. Eliza watched it happen and felt something fierce bloom in her chest. This was what Samuel had believed in, what he died for. Not just keeping land, but building something worth keeping. A community. A stand against people who thought money and power made them untouchable. Cole helped her to her feet. "You all right?" "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." She looked at him, this man who'd become something more than a stranger, something she wasn't ready to name yet. "What you did up there, punching Brennan? That was stupid." "Felt good, though." "I bet it did." She smiled despite everything. "Thank you. For paying the debt, for fighting, for all of it." "We're not done yet." "I know, but we won today. That counts for something." They walked back to their horses through a crowd that parted with newfound respect. People called out thanks, asked questions, offered help. It felt like something shifting, like the ground moving beneath their feet. As they rode out of town, Eliza looked back once. The courthouse square was still full of people talking, organizing, planning. A spark had been lit. Now they just had to keep it from being snuffed out. "What do you think he'll do?" she asked Cole. "Brennan. Come after us, hard and fast, before we can spread the evidence too far." Cole's expression was grim. "We need to be ready. Tonight, probably. Maybe sooner." "Ready for what?" Whatever he throws at us. They rode faster after that, the homestead drawing closer with every mile. Eliza's hand kept straying to her apron pocket, where she'd tucked the original papers back after showing them to the crowd. Evidence that could save or damn them, depending on how the next few days played out. The sun was directly overhead when they reached the gate with Cole's sign. Hart Ranch. Established 1880. Still standing. Still standing. For now. They hadn't been home an hour when Eliza saw the dust. She was in the kitchen, putting away the supplies they'd bought in town. Coffee, flour, a tin of peaches that felt like celebrating, even though they both knew it was too soon. Cole was in the barn checking on the horses, making sure everything was secured. The tension in his shoulders when he'd dismounted told her he expected trouble the same way she did, the kind that comes after you humiliate powerful men in public. The dust rose from the south trail, multiple riders moving fast. Eliza's stomach clenched. She grabbed the shotgun from above the door and stepped onto the porch. "Cole!" He emerged from the barn already holding his rifle, eyes tracking the approaching riders. "How many?" "4, maybe 5. Get inside, bar the door." "Like hell I will." Eliza pumped the shotgun, the sound loud and final in the afternoon heat. "This is my land. I'm not hiding in my own house." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, then thought better of it. He positioned himself at the corner of the porch where he'd have a clear line of sight. "Stay behind the post. Use it for cover if shooting starts." "You think it will?" "I think Brennan doesn't like losing." The riders resolved into 5 men, none of them Brennan or Talmadge. These were hired guns, the kind you found in cattle towns and mining camps. Hard faces and harder eyes, wearing their weapons like some men wore pocket watches. They reined up just outside the gate, horses dancing and blowing. The leader was a lean man with a scar that split his left cheek from eye to jawbone. He sat his saddle with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this before. "Mrs. Hart, Mr. Drayton." His voice was surprisingly cultured. "My name is Pike. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Robert Brennan." "Tell Brennan to deliver his own messages," Cole said. Mr. Brennan thought it best to send intermediaries. "Given the unpleasantness this morning," Pike's horse shifted and he controlled it with barely a touch. "He wanted me to extend an offer, a very generous offer, $200 for Mrs. Hart's deed, cash money, delivered today. All you have to do is sign the papers and walk away." "We already said no in town," Eliza called out. "Answer hasn't changed." "Mrs. Hart, I don't think you understand the gravity of your situation. Mr. Brennan is a patient man, but his patience has limits." Pike's hand rested on his thigh, inches from his gun. "He's offering you a way out, a peaceful way. I'd strongly suggest you take it. And I'd strongly suggest you get off my property before I put buckshot in your horse." Eliza's finger found the trigger. "I don't want to hurt an innocent animal, but I will if you force my hand." Pike's eyes narrowed. He looked at Cole. "You're really going to let her throw her life away over 160 acres of dust?" "I'm not letting her do anything," Cole said. "She makes her own choices. And she's chosen to fight." "Fight with what? Papers you stole? Accusations you can't prove?" Pike leaned forward in his saddle. "Mr. Brennan has lawyers, real lawyers. They'll tear apart anything you try to bring against him. And by the time the court's sorted out, you'll both be dead or bankrupt. Probably both." "Maybe," Cole agreed, "but we'll make a hell of a lot of noise dying. And noise attracts attention, federal attention, the kind that asks uncomfortable questions about land acquisitions and railroad deals and shell companies operating across multiple territories." Something flickered in Pike's expression. Not quite fear, but close. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Because I spent 2 years documenting Brennan's operations in 3 states. I know every shell company, every bribed official, every illegal acquisition, and I've already sent copies to contacts in Washington." Cole's voice went cold. "So you can kill us. But the information's already out there, already spreading. All you do is make it worse for your employer." Pike studied him for a long moment. Behind him, the other riders shifted restlessly. One had his hand on his gun, another was scanning the property, looking for additional threats. "Mr. Brennan anticipated you might say that," Pike finally said, "which is why he sent me with a second message. More of a warning, really." He reached into his saddlebag slowly, carefully, and pulled out a bundle of cloth. He tossed it over the gate. It landed in the dirt at the bottom of the porch steps. Eliza's throat closed. Even from this distance, she could see what it was. A child's doll. One of the Johnson girls, if she remembered right. The kind of toy a family too poor to buy much would treasure. The Johnsons' place burned down an hour ago, Pike said conversationally. Terrible accident. Lamp oil spilled near the stove, apparently. They got out safe, thank goodness, but they lost everything. House, barn, most of their livestock. He paused. They're staying with neighbors in town now, asking around about who might have been careless with matches. Rage flooded Eliza's vision, hot and red. You son of a... Cole's hand caught her arm, stopping her from raising the shotgun. Don't. That's what he wants. Pike smiled. The point, Mrs. Hart, is that accidents happen, especially to people who make trouble, especially to their friends and neighbors. He gathered his reins. So maybe you think about that. Think about whether your pride is worth watching everyone around you suffer. Because, Mr. Brennan, he can make life very difficult for the people of Red Hollow. And he will, if you keep pushing. Tell Brennan he just made a mistake, Cole said quietly. Up until now, this was about money and land. He just made it personal. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You burn people's homes, you target their families, you cross a line you can't uncross. Cole's grip on the rifle tightened. And when you cross that line, men like me stop playing by rules. We start playing to win. Pike's smile faded. He looked at Cole with fresh assessment, seeing something that made him wary. You should know. Mr. Brennan has resources you can't imagine, friends in high places. He can make you disappear and nobody will ask questions. Then he should have done that instead of sending you to threaten a woman on her own porch. Cole took a step forward. Now get out and tell your employer that if anyone else gets hurt, if one more building burns, I'm coming for him personally. No lawyers, no courts, just me and him and a conversation about consequences. For a moment, Pike looked like he might draw. His hand twitched toward his gun. The other riders tensed, reading his body language, preparing for violence. Then Pike laughed, breaking the tension. You got stones, Drayton, I'll give you that. But stones don't stop bullets. He turned his horse. Think about the offer, Mrs. Hart. $200 is more than this place is worth, more than it'll ever be worth. And it's a hell of a lot better than watching it burn. They rode off in a cloud of dust, leaving the doll lying in the dirt like an accusation. Eliza waited until they were out of sight before her knees buckled. She sat hard on the porch steps, the shotgun across her lap, and tried to breathe through the fury and fear warring in her chest. The Johnsons, she whispered. Martha and John and those babies. They're home. I know. Cole sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. But they're alive. That's what matters. Is it? Because they're alive and homeless. Because of me. Because I wouldn't sell. The tears came hot and fast. I did this. I brought this on them. No, Brennan did this. Pike did this. Men who think fear is an acceptable business tool did this. Cole's hand found hers. You stood up to bullies, Eliza. That's not a crime. That's courage. Courage doesn't rebuild their house. No, money does. And I have money. He squeezed her fingers. I'll make sure the Johnsons are taken care of. New house, better than the one they lost. Livestock replaced. Supplies. Everything. That's charity. That's reparations for bringing Brennan's attention down on them. Cole's voice hardened. And it's strategy. We show the town that standing with us doesn't mean suffering alone, that we protect our own. It undercuts Brennan's entire message. Eliza looked at him through her tears. You've thought about this, about what happens when he escalates. I've been waiting 2 years for him to escalate. I know how he thinks. Cole stood, pulling her up with him. Come on. We need to get to town before dark. Check on the Johnsons, make sure they're actually safe, and start spreading the word that anyone who stands with us will be protected. And if more buildings burn, if he goes after Webb or the sheriff then we go to the newspapers now, tonight. We don't wait for Monday. We send telegrams to every paper in Texas and New Mexico. We file federal complaints. We make so much noise that Brennan can't operate in the shadows anymore. Cole's jaw set. He wants to play dirty? Fine. But he's going to learn that some people know how to fight dirty too. They rode back to Red Hollow as the sun dropped toward the horizon. painting the scrubland gold and crimson. Smoke still rose from the Johnson property. Eliza could see it from the trail, a dark smudge against the evening sky. Her hands clenched on the reins so tight her knuckles went white. The town was in chaos when they arrived. People clustered in the square, voices raised, everyone talking at once. The Johnsons sat on the church steps looking shell-shocked, the children crying into Martha's skirts. Thomas Webb was arguing with Sheriff Hale. Others stood in tight knots, fear written plainly on their faces. The crowd parted when Eliza and Cole dismounted. Hostile eyes tracked them, scared eyes, angry eyes. "This is your fault." The accusation came from an older man Eliza recognized from the auction. "You stood up to Brennan, and now look what happened. The Johnsons lost everything." "We lost our home because we supported her," John Johnson said, standing. His face was soot-stained, his hands blistered. "But I don't regret it. Brennan was coming for us anyway. At least this way we know who the enemy is." "Easy for you to say," someone else muttered. "You're not the one who has to live with it." "The hell I'm not." John's voice rose. "My children watched their home burn, watched their toys and clothes and everything they owned turn to ash. You think I don't have to live with that?" He pointed at Eliza. "But she didn't light that fire. Brennan's men did, and cowering now won't stop them from coming for the rest of us." John's right. Martha stood, one child on her hip, the others clinging to her skirts. "Running won't help. Selling won't help. They'll take our land either way. At least if we fight together." "Together gets people killed," Webb said quietly. "I've got a wife and 2 daughters. I can't risk them for this." Cole stepped forward. "Then don't. Nobody has to fight who doesn't want to, but for those who do..." He raised his voice so everyone could hear. "I'm offering protection, financial and physical. Anyone who stands against Brennan gets a new start if they lose their property. New buildings, new livestock, whatever you need. I have the resources, and I'm willing to use them." "Why?" The question came from multiple people at once. "Why do you care?" Cole looked at Eliza, then back at the crowd. "Because 2 weeks ago I was a broken man with money and no purpose. Then a widow showed me kindness when she had every reason to turn me away. She trusted me, helped me remember what it means to stand for something bigger than yourself." His voice carried across the square. "Brennan took something from me 2 years ago. Took my company, my reputation, my sense of worth. And I let him, because I thought fighting back would make me as bad as him. But I was wrong. Some things are worth fighting for. Some people are worth protecting. And if that makes me as bad as Brennan, then so be it." The crowd murmured, uncertain. Then Sheriff Hale pushed forward. "This is insanity. You're talking about going to war with one of the most powerful men in the territory. He'll destroy you, all of you." "Maybe," Cole agreed, "but we'll make him work for it. And maybe, just maybe, we'll win. And maybe you'll get a lot of innocent people killed in the process." Hale's hand rested on his gun. "I should arrest you right now. For incitement, for conspiracy, for theft of those documents." "Go ahead." Cole spread his arms. "Arrest me. Take me to jail. And then explain to the territorial governor why you're protecting a man who burns down homesteads and bribes public officials." He pulled papers from his jacket. "Because these copies go out tonight whether I'm in jail or not. I've already arranged it." Hale's face went red, then white. "You're bluffing." "Try me and find out." Cole's voice dropped to something dangerous. "But know this, Sheriff, if you side with Brennan now, if you help him hurt these people, there's no coming back from it. When this is over, when the truth comes out, you'll be remembered as the man who chose money over justice. Is $50 a month worth that?" The silence stretched. Every eye in the square was on Hale. The sheriff's hand tightened on his gun, knuckles going white. For a heartbeat, Eliza thought he might actually draw, might shoot Cole right there in front of everyone. Then Hale's hand dropped. "I'm not bought." "Then prove it. Help us, or at least stay out of our way." Hale looked around at the watching crowd, seeing judgment in their eyes, seeing the choice laid out stark and clear. Finally he said, "I'll investigate the fire. Do my job. But I'm not taking sides in your war with Brennan." "That's all we're asking." Cole tucked the papers back in his jacket. "Just do your job honestly, Sheriff. That's all anyone wants." Hale turned and walked away, back stiff with wounded pride. The crowd watched him go, then turned back to Cole and Eliza with expectation written on their faces. Martha Johnson spoke first. What do we do now? Now we organize, Cole said. We document everything, every reassessment, every threat, every burned building. We send it to newspapers, to federal officials, to anyone who'll listen. We make Brennan's operation too visible to continue. And when he retaliates, someone asked, we protect each other, watch each other's properties, travel in groups, make it harder for him to pick us off one by one. Cole looked around the square. I know this is scary. I know you're all afraid. But fear is what Brennan counts on. Fear makes people compliant, makes them easy to control, so we fight the fear by standing together. Slowly, reluctantly, people began to nod. Not everyone. Some drifted away, unwilling to take the risk. But others stayed. The Johnsons. Webb, despite his earlier doubts, the older man who'd first accused Eliza. A dozen others, maybe more, forming a loose circle in the fading light. Eliza felt something shift in her chest. This was what community looked like. Imperfect people making imperfect choices, but choosing to stand together anyway. Samuel would have been proud. They spent the next hour planning. Webb offered his store as a gathering place. The Johnsons would stay with Webb's family until new housing could be arranged. Others volunteered to patrol the streets at night, watching for more of Brennan's men. Cole distributed money for supplies, for repairs, for whatever was needed. It wasn't enough. Nothing could be enough after what had been lost. But it was a start. As the meeting broke up and people drifted home, Eliza found Martha sitting on the church steps with her youngest daughter asleep in her arms. I'm sorry, Eliza said, for all of this, for what you lost. Martha looked up, eyes red but dry. Don't be. We were going to lose it anyway, just slower. At least this way, we know we fought back. She adjusted her grip on the sleeping child. And Mrs. Hart, thank you for standing up, for giving us permission to do the same. Eliza's throat closed. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and turned away before the tears could start again. Cole was waiting by the horses. Ready to go home? Home. The word felt strange. A week ago it had just been a place. Now it was something more, something worth the fight. Yes, let's go home. They rode back through darkness lit by a moon 3/4 full. Neither spoke much. The weight of the day pressed down like a physical thing, exhaustion settling into their bones. But there was something else, too. A sense of purpose, of rightness, despite the fear. The homestead appeared as a darker shape against the dark prairie. No lights, no movement, exactly as they'd left it. Cole reined up at the gate. Stay here. Let me check the house first. Cole, please. Just this once. Let me be cautious. His voice held an edge she hadn't heard before. Fear, barely controlled. Eliza waited while he dismounted and approached the house with his rifle ready, moving from shadow to shadow like a man who'd done this before. He disappeared inside. A minute passed. 2. Then a lamp flared to life in the kitchen window. Cole appeared in the doorway and waved her forward. It's clear. Eliza's hands shook as she dismounted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the day was finally draining away, leaving her hollow and trembling. She made it to the porch before her legs gave out. Cole caught her, guided her inside, settled her into a chair. He put coffee on to boil and neither of them spoke while it heated. The silence felt fragile, like something that might shatter if they breathed wrong. Finally, Cole said, that was Pike's first mistake. What? Burning the Johnsons' place. He thought it would scare people into compliance. Instead, it made them angry. Cole poured coffee into 2 cups, added sugar to both without asking. Brennan's losing control of the situation, making emotional decisions instead of calculated ones. That's when people like him make mistakes. People like him also get dangerous when they're cornered. Yes, which is why we need to move fast. Tomorrow I'm sending telegrams to every newspaper between here and Santa Fe. I'm filing formal complaints with the territorial governor and the federal land office. And I'm hiring guards to watch this property and the Johnsons' land. With what? You just gave away half your money to the town. Cole smiled without humor. I still have the other half, plus investments, plus property in 3 states. Brennan thinks he can outlast me financially. He's wrong. Eliza sipped her coffee, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. This morning at the auction, when you punched him? Stupid. I know. I was going to say satisfying. I've never seen someone's expression change that fast. She set down the cup. But Cole, what happens when the papers print the story? When Brennan's reputation starts crumbling? Men like him don't just accept defeat. No, they escalate, which is why I need to ask you something. Cole leaned forward, elbows on the table. Are you absolutely sure you want to keep fighting? Because there's still time to walk away. Take the money, sell the land, start over somewhere safe. Are you suggesting I should? No, I'm making sure you understand the cost. This gets worse before it gets better. Brennan will come after us with everything he has. Legal challenges, physical threats, maybe worse. Cole's eyes held hers. I can protect you from most of it, but not all. And I need to know you're prepared for that. Eliza thought about Samuel, about the promise she'd made, about Martha Johnson's children crying on the church steps and the doll lying in her yard and all the other people Brennan had hurt or would hurt if someone didn't stop him. I'm sure, she said, whatever it costs. I'm sure. Then we see this through together. Cole reached across the table and took her hand. Equal partners. Equal partners. Eliza squeezed his fingers, feeling the calluses that matched her own. Although, I have to say, your half of this partnership involves a lot more money than mine. Your half involves a lot more courage. I'm not courageous. I'm just stubborn. Sometimes that's the same thing. They sat like that for a while, hands joined across the table, drinking coffee and not talking about tomorrow or the fight ahead, or anything except the simple comfort of not being alone. Outside, the coyotes started their evening song. Inside, the lamp flame danced in the draft from the window, casting shadows that moved and merged and separated again. Finally, Eliza stood. I should sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. Yes, but Cole didn't let go of her hand. Eliza, about what I said at the auction, about wanting to be part of whatever comes after, don't. She pulled her hand free gently. Not tonight. Tonight I just need to rest. We can talk about the future when we're sure we have one. Understanding crossed his face. All right, but for what it's worth, I meant it. I know you did. That's what scares me. She picked up the lamp. Good night, Cole. Good night. She went to her room and closed the door, leaning against it in the darkness. Her heart was pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with Brennan or Pike or burned buildings. She touched her mother's ring, still on her finger, and thought about promises and the different kinds of courage it took to keep them. Outside, she heard Cole moving around the kitchen, cleaning up, banking the fire. The sounds of someone making a home. The sounds she'd missed for 3 years. Eliza undressed and climbed into bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept circling back to Cole's words, about wanting to be part of her future, about standing together, about all the things they hadn't said but hung in the air between them anyway. She was still awake when she heard the horses. Eliza was out of bed and at the window in seconds, shotgun in hand, heart in her throat. Through the gap in the curtains, she could see riders approaching, at least 6 of them, moving slow and purposeful in the moonlight. Pike and his men, back to finish what threats couldn't start. She grabbed her robe and ran for the kitchen. Cole was already there, rifle loaded, standing at the window. How many? She whispered. 6, maybe 7. They're circling the property. His voice was deadly calm. Get down. Stay away from the windows. This is my house, and you'll defend it better by staying alive. Get down. A shot cracked the night. The kitchen window exploded inward, glass raining down. Eliza dropped, covering her head. Cole returned fire. 3 quick shots that lit up the darkness. Outside, someone screamed. The barn, Cole said. They're trying to burn the barn. Eliza's blood went cold. The barn held their supplies, their tools. Samuel's things that she'd kept all these years. And more importantly, it held Cole's horse and her mule, animals that depended on them for protection. Another shot. The lamp on the table shattered, plunging them into darkness. Cole fired blind, aiming at muzzle flashes. Eliza crawled to the other window, raised the shotgun, and waited for a target. There. A figure running toward the barn with something in his hands. She led him by a foot and squeezed the trigger. The shotgun's roar was deafening in the small kitchen. The figure went down, whatever he'd been carrying spilling across the ground. Lamp oil. They'd been planning to burn them out. "Good shot," Cole said. "But there's more. Cover the door." He moved to reload. Eliza pumped the shotgun, ejecting the spent shell, and trained the barrel on the door. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. After everything, the fear, the exhaustion, the terror of men with guns coming in the night, her hands were rock steady. Bootsteps on the porch. The door handle turned. Eliza's finger found the trigger. "Don't," Cole said quietly. "Let them come in. Better odds." The door crashed open. Two men rushed in, guns drawn. Eliza fired once, the shotgun blast catching the first man's center mass and throwing him backward into the second. Cole's rifle barked, and the second man went down. Silence. Ringing silence, broken only by ragged breathing and the drip of something wet hitting the floor. "Anyone else?" Eliza's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Flat, cold. "Not in here, but there's still riders outside." Cole moved to the window. "They're pulling back, regrouping. We can't hold them off all night." "We don't have to. Look." Eliza crawled to the window and peered out. Lights were approaching from the direction of town. Lanterns, torches, and behind them riders. A dozen or more coming fast. The townspeople. Coming to help. Pike's men saw them too. There was a moment of confusion, horses wheeling, shouts in the darkness. Then they scattered, riding hard in different directions. The townspeople gave chase to some, but most of the attackers melted into the night. Within minutes, the yard was full of people. Thomas Webb and his sons. The older man from the auction. Others Eliza barely knew, armed with rifles and shotguns, and the kind of grim determination that said they were tired of being afraid. Webb climbed the porch steps, taking in the broken windows, the bodies, the blood. "Everyone all right in there?" "We're alive," Cole called back. "And grateful. How'd you know to come?" "Johnson's eldest boy was watching from the ridge like we planned. Saw the riders gathering, ran to town for help." Webb looked at the bodies, his expression unreadable. "Looks like you didn't need much of it." "We needed all of it," Eliza said, stepping into the doorway. Her robe was splattered with blood that wasn't hers. The shotgun hung loose in her hand. "They were going to burn us out. Would have, if you hadn't come." The men in the yard exchanged glances. Seeing her there, seeing what she'd done, something shifted in their expressions. Respect, fear, recognition that the widow Hart wasn't someone to be dismissed or protected, but someone who'd stand her ground and deal death if needed. "We should get these bodies to the sheriff," someone said. "No." Cole emerged from the house. "We take them to Brennan, drop them on his doorstep, let him see the cost of his war." "That's," Webb swallowed. "That's bold. That's necessary. He needs to know we're not cowering anymore. That every move he makes, we'll match it." Cole's voice carried across the yard. "This ends when Brennan backs down or when one side can't fight anymore. I'd prefer he choose the first option, but I'm prepared for the second." In the end, they compromised. They took the bodies to Sheriff Hale with a message for Brennan. Back off, or this escalates. Hale looked at the corpses, looked at the assembled townspeople, and for the first time since this started, Eliza saw real fear in his eyes. "This is murder," he said. "This is self-defense," Cole corrected. "They attacked Mrs. Hart's property. We have witnesses. You want to arrest someone, arrest Pike for arson and attempted murder." Hale didn't respond, just stared at the bodies and probably calculated how much his $50 a month was really worth. The townspeople stayed until dawn, taking shifts watching the property. Eliza made coffee for everyone, moving through the rituals of hospitality in a daze. The adrenaline had finally worn off, leaving her shaky and cold despite the warmth of the kitchen. Cole found her sitting on the porch steps as the sun rose, watching the last of the night guards ride off. "You all right?" he asked. "I killed a man tonight." "I know." "I didn't even hesitate, just pulled the trigger." Her hands were shaking now, delayed reaction. "What does that make me?" "Someone who survived. Someone who protected what's hers." Cole sat beside her. "You think I haven't asked myself the same thing? Every time I've had to hurt someone to defend myself or others. But Eliza, there's a difference between violence that protects and violence that destroys. You did the first. Pike's men were doing the second. Does that make it easier? No, it just makes it necessary. He took her hand, held it firm until the shaking eased. You're not a killer. You're a fighter. There's a difference. Eliza wanted to believe him, wanted to feel that certainty he seemed to carry, but all she felt was tired. Bone tired. Soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that came from holding on too long to things that wanted to slip away. What do we do now? She asked. Cole looked out at the property, at the broken windows and the bloodstains in the yard, and the sign by the gate that still proclaimed Hart Ranch. Still standing. Now, he said, we make Brennan an offer he can't refuse. The offer Cole had in mind wasn't what Eliza expected. They sat in the kitchen through the morning as he laid it out, his voice calm and measured, despite the broken glass still scattered on the floor and the bullet holes in the walls. Outside, Webb's sons were boarding up windows while Martha Johnson swept the porch, insisting she needed to be useful after everything they'd done for her family. We give Brennan a choice, Cole said. He walks away from Red Hollow completely. No more acquisitions, no more reassessments, no more operations in this territory, and in exchange, I don't release the evidence. I don't destroy his reputation in Kansas and Colorado. I let him keep what he's already built, but he leaves Texas alone. Eliza stared at him. You're offering to let him win? I'm offering him a stalemate. He keeps his empire. We keep our land. Nobody else gets hurt. Cole's hands flattened on the table. It's not justice, Eliza, but it's survival. And right now, survival might be the best we can hope for. No. The word came out harder than she intended. No. We have the evidence. We have witnesses. We have public support. Why would we give that up? Because people died last night. Because the Johnsons lost their home. Because if this keeps escalating, more people will suffer. Cole's voice was strained. I want Brennan destroyed as much as you do. Maybe more. But I won't buy that revenge with other people's blood. It's not revenge. It's accountability. It's both. And the line between them gets real thin when you're standing in the middle of it. He gestured at the boarded windows. Last night proved Brennan will go to any length. Burning buildings. Killing. What's next? Taking hostages? Targeting children? His jaw clenched. I won't be responsible for that. I can't be. Eliza felt her own anger rising, hot and righteous. So we just let him walk away? Let him keep stealing from people in other territories because we're too afraid to fight? We're not afraid. We're being strategic. If we take this deal, we save Red Hollow. Everyone here keeps their land. Brennan's operation in Texas collapses. That's a win. It's a compromise. Sometimes compromise is the only win available. They glared at each other across the table, the space between them suddenly feeling vast. This was the first real disagreement they'd had, and it cut deeper than Eliza expected. She'd thought they were aligned, partners. But maybe Cole was still the same man he'd been 2 weeks ago, someone who'd rather lose honorably than win dirty. I didn't take you for a coward, she said quietly. Cole flinched like she'd struck him. That's not fair, isn't it? Brennan stole from you, destroyed you. And now, when you finally have the chance to return the favor, you want to make a deal? Eliza stood, needing to move, to put distance between them. What happened to making him pay? To fighting dirty? I was angry when I said that, stupid with rage. Cole's voice cracked. But I've been thinking all night, Eliza, thinking about those bodies in the yard, about the look on Martha Johnson's face when her children cried, about what it means to win if the cost is watching good people suffer. He stood too, facing her. I want justice, but not like this. Not at any price. Then what price are you willing to pay? The question hung between them. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're willing to sacrifice justice to protect your conscience, and I won't do that. I can't. The silence was broken by a knock at the door. Thomas Webb stuck his head in, his expression apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, but there's a rider coming. Alone. Looks like Brennan. Cole and Eliza exchanged glances. Whatever argument they were having would have to wait. Robert Brennan rode up to the gate alone as promised, sitting his black stallion with the bearing of a man who owned everything he surveyed. He looked tired, though, Eliza noticed. The kind of tired that came from being awake all night making calculations and finding the numbers didn't add up the way they used to. Cole met him at the gate, rifle visible but not raised. Eliza stood on the porch with her shotgun, letting him see she was armed. The men from town had positioned themselves around the property, a show of force that said any violence would be met and matched. "Cole." Brennan's voice was measured, civil, like they were meeting for business drinks instead of standing over the graves of his hired guns. "We need to talk." "So talk." "Not out here. Inside. Just the two of us. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of witnesses." Brennan's jaw tightened. "Fine. I'm here to make an offer. A final offer. You walk away from this right now and I'll forget everything. The stolen documents, the accusations, the damage to my reputation. You and Mrs. Hart leave Texas, start over somewhere else, and this ends." "That's not an offer," Cole said. "That's a threat dressed in diplomatic language. Call it what you want, but it's the best you're going to get." Brennan leaned forward in his saddle. "You cost me 6 men last night. Good men, expensive men. That kind of loss doesn't go unanswered unless there's a compelling reason. So I'm giving you that reason. Walk away, and we both survive this." "What about the people of Red Hollow? What about their land?" "Not my concern. And frankly, not yours either." Brennan's gaze flicked to Eliza. "Unless you've developed some misguided attachment to a widow and a patch of dirt, which, knowing you, you probably have." Cole's hands tightened on the rifle. "Those people are under my protection now. You come after them, you come after me." "Interesting. Because last I checked, you were broke. Disgraced. Barely scraping by on what little I left you." Brennan smiled without warmth. "Yet here you are, throwing money around like you're still somebody. Makes me wonder where it's coming from. What you sold to finance this crusade." The implication hung heavy in the morning air. Eliza saw understanding cross Cole's face, followed by something that looked like resignation. "I sold it all," Cole said quietly. "Every property I owned in Colorado and New Mexico. Every investment, every share of stock, liquidated everything and put it into stopping you." Brennan's expression shifted. Not quite shock, but close. "You bankrupted yourself? For this?" "For them. For her. For the principle of the thing." Cole's voice was steady. "You were right about me, Robert. I am too proud, too stubborn, too willing to lose honorably rather than win dirty. But you were wrong about one thing. I can change. And I have." "Clearly." Brennan studied him for a long moment. "So what now? We fight until one of us is destroyed? Until there's nothing left but ashes and regret?" "That depends on you." Cole lowered the rifle slightly. "I came here planning revenge, planning to tear down everything you built, the way you tore down everything I built. But I've learned some things these past 2 weeks, about what matters, about the cost of obsession." He glanced at Eliza. "So I'm going to make you an offer instead. You leave Red Hollow, cancel all the reassessments, return any deeds you've acquired. And in exchange, I don't release the evidence of your operations in other territories. I let you keep your empire everywhere else. But Texas is done. Red Hollow is off limits, forever." Brennan laughed, a sound without humor. "You think I'd accept those terms, after everything you've cost me?" "I think you'll accept them because the alternative is worse. I've already sent copies of your ledgers to 3 newspapers. They're sitting on the story, waiting for my signal. One telegram from me and your reputation is finished. Every land deal you've ever made gets scrutinized. Every official you've bribed gets investigated. You might survive it legally, but professionally, socially, you'll be ruined." Cole's voice hardened. "So, yes, Robert, I think you'll take the deal because it's the only way you walk away from this with anything left." The silence stretched. Brennan's horse shifted beneath him, sensing his tension. Finally, the older man said, "You've gotten cold, Cole. I almost admire it." "I've gotten practical. There's a difference." "Is there?" Brennan gathered his reins. "I need time to consider." "You have until sundown. After that, the telegrams go out and we see who's left standing when the dust settles." Brennan rode off without another word, back straight and head high, but Eliza could see the defeat in the set of his shoulders. He'd come expecting to intimidate. Instead, he'd been outmaneuvered by the one man who knew him well enough to anticipate every move. Cole watched him go, then turned to face Eliza. I know you're angry. I know you wanted him destroyed completely, but this is the right move, the smart move. Maybe. Eliza descended the porch steps slowly. But it still feels like letting him win. He's not winning. He's retreating. There's a difference. Cole set down the rifle. Eliza, I meant what I said. I sold everything, every asset I had outside of the money I brought here. I'm not rich anymore. I'm just a man with enough cash to rebuild what's been lost and start over. The implications of that hit her like a physical blow. Why would you do that? Because somewhere between fixing your gate and watching you face down Brennan at the auction, I realized, I don't want my old life back. I don't want the empire or the reputation or any of it. His voice dropped. I want this. The simplicity of it. The honesty. I want to build something real instead of just profitable. And I want to do it here, if you'll have me. Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. Cole, I'm not asking for an answer right now. I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other 2 weeks, and most of that's been crisis and violence. He took a step toward her. But when this is over, when Brennan's gone and Red Hollow is safe, I want to stay, help you run this place, build it into something bigger, not for money or pride or revenge, just because it matters, because you matter. She should have been angry still, should have held on to her righteous fury about compromise and justice. But looking at him now, this man who'd given up everything to fight beside her, who'd chosen principle over profit for maybe the first time in his life, she felt the anger drain away. You're an idiot, she said softly. Probably. You threw away a fortune for a widow you barely know and a homestead that's barely worth the taxes on it. Yes. Samuel would have liked you. He was an idiot too. Eliza smiled despite herself. Stubborn and impractical and absolutely convinced that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the smart thing. Sounds like a good man. He was. The best I ever knew. She paused. Until maybe now. Cole's expression shifted into something vulnerable and hopeful and terrified all at once. Does that mean? It means we see this through. We wait for Brennan's answer. We protect Red Hollow, and when it's done, Eliza took a breath. When it's done, we talk about what comes next. Really talk. About partnership and the future and all the things we haven't said because we were too busy surviving to think past tomorrow. I can live with that. Good. Because I'm not ready for more than that yet. My heart's been locked up for 3 years, Cole. You can't expect me to just open it because you made a grand gesture. I don't expect anything. I'm just grateful you're considering it. He held out his hand. Partners? Partners. She took his hand, felt the familiar calluses, the warmth. Now, let's go tell the others. They deserve to know what's happening. The townspeople gathered in the yard as Cole explained the offer and the ultimatum. Some were skeptical, others relieved. All of them understood that this was a gamble. Brennan could refuse, could call their bluff, could escalate further. But if he accepts, Martha Johnson asked, if he really leaves Red Hollow alone, then you rebuild, all of you, and I help. Cole looked around the circle of faces. I have enough money left to construct new buildings for everyone who lost property, to buy seed and livestock, to set up a fund that protects against future reassessments. He paused. It won't replace what was taken. Nothing can do that. But it's a start. Why? The older man who'd first accused Eliza stepped forward. Why spend your money on us? What do you get out of it? Cole glanced at Eliza, something passing between them. Then he said, I get to be part of something that matters. I get to help build instead of just acquire. And I get to prove that not every rich man is like Brennan, that sometimes people with resources use them for good instead of just more profit. That's a hell of a sermon for a cattle baron, someone muttered. Former cattle baron. Now I'm just someone who knows how to swing a hammer and wants to learn how to farm. Cole smiled slightly. If you'll teach me. Slowly, cautiously, people began to nod. Not everyone trusted him. Trust would take time. But they were willing to try, willing to see if this strange partnership between a widow and a reformed tycoon could actually work. The day crawled toward sunset. Eliza tried to stay busy, cleaning up the broken glass, helping Martha prepare food for the men standing watch, anything to keep her hands occupied and her mind off the waiting. But every time she looked at the western horizon, measuring the sun's descent, her stomach clenched. Cole spent the afternoon writing. Telegrams to newspapers, formal complaints to federal offices, letters to contacts Eliza hadn't known he had, preparing for either outcome, Brennan's acceptance or his refusal. Always planning ahead, always 3 moves forward in a game that never seemed to end. As the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of copper and blood, a rider appeared on the southern trail. Not Brennan this time. Talmadge. The land agent looked diminished somehow, smaller than he had at the auction. He rode slowly, hands visible and empty, making it clear this wasn't an attack. Cole met him at the gate. Eliza stayed on the porch, shotgun nearby, but not in hand. The townspeople materialized from their positions, forming a loose semicircle, witnesses to whatever came next. Talmadge dismounted stiffly. Mr. Brennan asked me to deliver his response. So, deliver it. Talmadge pulled an envelope from his jacket, handed it over. Cole opened it, read the contents, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched so long Eliza thought she might scream. Finally, Cole looked up. He accepts, with conditions. What conditions? Eliza asked. All pending reassessments in Red Hollow are canceled. Deeds acquired in the past 6 months are returned to original owners for the price paid, which means people like the Johnsons get their land back. Brennan and I both sign a legal agreement that Red Hollow is off limits for future acquisitions by either of us. Cole's voice went flat. In exchange, I destroy all copies of the evidence and sign a non-disclosure agreement. I never speak publicly about his operations in other territories, and we both pretend this never happened. That's insane, someone said. He's getting away with everything he did in Kansas and Colorado. Yes, Cole agreed, but everyone in Red Hollow keeps their land. Isn't that worth it? The question hung heavy. Eliza could see people struggling with it, the desire for justice warring with the need for security. Finally, John Johnson spoke. We didn't lose our home so Brennan could keep destroying people in other places. If you have evidence that can stop him everywhere, not just here, then use it. It's not that simple, Cole said. The evidence proves coordination, but getting convictions would take years. Meanwhile, Brennan fights back. Maybe targets you specifically, John, for speaking up. Maybe goes after your children. His voice softened. I can keep Red Hollow safe by taking this deal. I can't keep you safe if this becomes a prolonged legal battle. So we trade our safety for other people's suffering, Martha said quietly. Is that what we're reduced to? The shame in her voice cut through the gathering. Eliza saw it reflected in faces around the circle. The knowledge that accepting this deal meant condemning strangers in other territories to the same fate they'd barely escaped. She thought about the widow McCrae, forced to leave everything behind, about Pike's men burning the Johnson home, about all the people in Kansas and Colorado and New Mexico who'd lost their land to Brennan's schemes and had no one to fight for them. No, she said. Everyone turned to look at her. We don't take the deal. We release the evidence, all of it. We send it to every newspaper, every federal office, every territorial governor between here and the Mississippi. Eliza stepped off the porch, moving to stand beside Cole. Because if we don't, we're no better than Brennan. We're just protecting our own at the expense of everyone else. Eliza, Cole's voice held a warning. Think about what you're saying. I have thought about it. I've thought about nothing else since you laid out that offer this morning. She turned to face the assembled townspeople. I know you're all scared. I know you want this to be over, but we have a chance here to do more than just save ourselves. We have a chance to stop Brennan from ever doing this to anyone else. And yes, that means risk. That means he might come after us harder. But isn't that better than living with the knowledge that we could have stopped him and chose not to? Silence. Then Thomas Webb cleared his throat. Mrs. Hart's right. My grandfather used to say that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Well, we've been doing nothing for too long, letting men like Brennan run roughshod over us because we were too scared or too tired to fight back. He looked at Cole. You offered us protection, resources. You've proven you're willing to stand with us, so I say we stand with you and with Mrs. Hart. We release the evidence and we face whatever comes together. One by one, people voiced agreement. Not everyone. Some were too afraid, too worn down by years of hardship to take on one more fight. But enough. More than enough. Cole looked at Eliza with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pride? Frustration? Fear? Maybe all three. You're sure about this? He asked quietly. Because once we do this, there's no going back. Brennan will come at us with everything he has. I'm sure. Are you? Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Talmadge. Tell Brennan the answer is no. Tell him the evidence goes out tonight. And tell him that if anyone in Red Hollow, anyone at all, suffers because of this, I will spend every remaining dollar I have making his life a living hell. I will haunt him. I will destroy him piece by piece until there's nothing left but regret and ashes. Do you understand? Talmadge had gone pale. Mr. Brennan won't accept this. He doesn't have to accept it. He just has to live with it. Cole's smile was all edges. Now get off this property before I decide you're as guilty as he is, and start there. Talmadge scrambled back onto his horse and rode off like demons were chasing him. Maybe they were. The townspeople erupted into conversation, some excited, some terrified, all of them processing what they'd just committed to. Cole pulled Eliza aside, far enough from the others that they couldn't be overheard. You just declared war on one of the most powerful men in the territory, he said. We declared war together. I was trying to keep you safe. I don't need safe. I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror. Eliza met his eyes. You said you wanted to build something real, something that matters. Well, this matters. Standing up, fighting back, making sure no one else suffers what we suffered. Even if it costs us everything? Everything's already been taken from me once. I survived it. I'll survive it again if I have to. She touched his face, feeling the stubble rough against her palm. But I'd rather survive it with you beside me than without you. Something broke in Cole's expression. He pulled her close, not kissing her but just holding her, and Eliza felt 3 years of loneliness crack apart like ice in spring. She'd thought this kind of closeness was gone forever, that Samuel's death had taken it with him. But here it was again, different but just as real, just as necessary. We should probably prepare for retaliation, Cole said against her hair. Probably. Brennan's going to be furious, irrational, dangerous. I know. We could still die. We could, but at least we'll die doing the right thing. Eliza pulled back to look at him. That has to count for something. Cole laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and despair. You're impossible. So I've been told. She smiled. Now come on. We have telegrams to send and a town to fortify. Brennan's not going to wait long before he responds. They worked through the night. Cole drafted messages while Eliza organized the townspeople into watch rotations. Webb volunteered his store as a central gathering point, easily defended with its brick walls and limited entrances. Others contributed what weapons they had, what supplies could be spared. It wasn't an army, but it was something. A community coming together in defense of itself. By dawn, the telegrams were sent. The evidence was out there, spreading like wildfire across the wires. Newspapers in El Paso and Santa Fe and Denver would have the story by afternoon. Federal marshals would be reading the complaints by evening. And Brennan's carefully constructed empire of legal theft would start to crumble. Eliza stood on her porch watching the sunrise and wondered if this would be her last one. If Brennan would send more men, more guns, more violence to silence them before the damage spread too far. She touched her mother's ring, thinking about promises and legacies and the different ways people chose to fight. Cole came to stand beside her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. They'd become a ritual, these morning coffees, a moment of peace before whatever storm came next. No riders yet, he said. Give it time. He'll come. Maybe. Or maybe he's already running, trying to get ahead of the scandal, protect what assets he can. Cole sipped his coffee. Men like Brennan, they're predators, and predators flee when the prey fights back hard enough. You really believe that? I want to believe it. Whether it's true, He shrugged. I guess we'll find out. They stood in silence as the sun climbed higher. Birds began their morning songs. The coyotes that had howled all night fell silent. Normal life, continuing despite human drama and violence. There was something comforting in that. Something that reminded Eliza that the world was bigger than Brennan, bigger than land disputes and legal theft, bigger than any of them. Around mid-morning, a rider appeared, but not from the direction of town, from the north. And as he got closer, Eliza saw it wasn't one of Brennan's men at all. It was a federal marshal. The marshal identified himself as Joseph Grant, sent from Santa Fe after receiving Cole's complaints. He was a solid man in his 40s with the kind of face that had seen too much and believed too little. But his eyes were sharp and his questions were pointed, and as Cole and Eliza walked him through everything, the ledger, the reassessments, the violence, the burned buildings, she saw belief start to take hold. I'll need to see the original documents, Grant said. They're in Talmadge's office. We only have copies. Then we'll get the originals, legally this time. Grant pulled out a notebook. I'll also need witness statements, property records, anything that establishes the pattern you're describing. You believe us? Eliza asked. Grant looked at her. Ma'am, I've been investigating land fraud for 15 years. I know the signs, and everything you're describing matches schemes I've seen in 4 other territories. If Brennan and his associates are behind this, I'll build a case that puts them away for a long time. And if they retaliate before you can build that case, then I arrest them for that too. Intimidation of witnesses is a federal crime. Grant's expression hardened. But I won't lie to you. This investigation will take months, maybe years. And during that time, you'll be targets, both of you. Are you prepared for that? Cole and Eliza exchanged glances. They'd been asking themselves the same question for days. Now here was the answer. Yes, Eliza said. We're prepared. Grant spent 3 days in Red Hollow, taking statements, examining evidence, coordinating with local authorities who weren't on Brennan's payroll. Sheriff Hale, faced with federal scrutiny, suddenly became cooperative. He admitted to taking payments, claimed he didn't know they were illegal, and offered to testify in exchange for leniency. It was cowardice dressed as cooperation, but Grant took it anyway. On the 4th day, federal marshals raided Talmadge's office in Brennan's hotel room. They found the ledgers, exactly where Cole said they'd be. They found correspondence with officials in 3 territories. They found evidence of a criminal enterprise operating across state lines, which meant federal jurisdiction, which meant Brennan couldn't hide behind local corruption anymore. Brennan himself was arrested trying to board a train in El Paso. The newspapers called it the largest land fraud case in territorial history. They published excerpts from the ledgers, interviews with victims, detailed breakdowns of how the scheme worked. Brennan's name became synonymous with greed and corruption. Talmadge turned state's evidence, hoping for mercy. Pike disappeared, probably fleeing to Mexico. And slowly, piece by piece, the empire Brennan had built began to collapse. Through it all, Eliza and Cole worked. They rebuilt the Johnson house, bigger and sturdier than before. They helped organize the townspeople into a cooperative that would protect against future fraud. They testified at preliminary hearings, gave interviews to newspapers, became the face of resistance against land theft. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. But it was also exhilarating in a way Eliza had never experienced. She was part of something larger than herself, part of a movement that would protect not just Red Hollow, but communities across the territory. 3 months after that first night, when a stranger appeared on her porch during a storm, Eliza stood at Samuel's grave on the rise, overlooking the western pasture. The cottonwood had leafed out, providing shade against the summer heat. Wildflowers grew around the base of the wooden cross, Indian paintbrush and bluebonnets that Martha Johnson had planted as a thank you. I kept my promise, Eliza said to the grave. The land's still ours, still standing. And I think we're building something you'd be proud of. Not just a homestead, a real community, people looking out for each other instead of just surviving alone. She touched the cross, feeling the weather-worn wood. I miss you. I'll always miss you. But I'm not alone anymore, Samuel. I found someone. Someone good and stubborn and absolutely convinced that doing the right thing matters more than doing the smart thing. Remind you of anyone? The wind rustled through the cottonwood leaves. Eliza chose to believe it was Samuel's approval. She walked back down the rise to find Cole standing by the new corral he'd built, watching the horses they'd bought with what remained of his money. He looked different now than he had that first morning. Less haunted, more settled, like he'd finally found the place he was supposed to be. "Talking to Samuel?" he asked as she approached. "Telling him about everything. About you." She leaned against the fence beside him. "I think he'd like you, or at least respect what you've done. High praise from a dead man I never met. Don't be glib. Samuel was—" She paused, searching for words. "He was the best parts of me. The courage I couldn't always find. The stubbornness I tried to hide. The absolute refusal to quit even when quitting made sense. And I think maybe you're those same parts, just in a different package." Cole turned to face her fully. "Eliza Hart, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I've been thinking about the future, about what comes after the trials and the rebuilding and all the immediate crisis." She took a breath. "And I'm saying that if you're still interested in staying, in building something here together, then maybe we could talk about making it official." "Official how?" "However you want. Partners in the legal sense, or—" She felt her face heat. "Or something more than partners." Cole's expression shifted through surprise to joy to something that looked like fear. "You mean marriage?" "Eventually, maybe, if you want." Eliza couldn't quite meet his eyes. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months, but the last 3 years taught me that time isn't guaranteed. That waiting for the perfect moment means missing the good enough moment that's right in front of you. And this, us, it feels right. It feels like the thing I'm supposed to do next. Even though I'm broke, even though I have nothing left but a few $1,000s and no prospects beyond learning to farm, especially because of that. You gave up everything, Cole. Not for profit or pride, but for principle. For people you'd just met. For a cause that wasn't yours until you chose to make it yours." She finally looked at him. "That's the kind of man I want to build a life with. Not a rich man, not a powerful man. Just a good one." Cole was quiet for so long, Eliza started to panic. Maybe she'd misread everything. Maybe his talk about staying had just been comfort, not commitment. Maybe— He kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was fierce and certain and tasted like coffee and dust and promises. Eliza felt her knees go weak, felt 3 years of grief and loneliness burn away in the heat of it, felt something new and terrifying and wonderful take root in the space left behind. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole said, "Yes." "Yes to what?" "To all of it. Partnership, marriage, building something together. Growing old on this stubborn patch of dirt and teaching whoever comes after us that some things are worth fighting for." He cupped her face in his hands. "I love you, Eliza Hart. I've probably loved you since the moment you let a stranger sit on your porch in the storm. And I'd be honored to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of that kindness." Eliza felt tears burn her eyes, but they were good tears. Clean tears. "I love you too. It terrifies me, but I do." "Good. We can be terrified together." They stood there in the afternoon sun, holding each other, while the horses moved in the corral, and the chickens scratched in the yard, and somewhere in the distance a hawk cried out. Normal life. Beautiful in its ordinariness. That evening they sat on the porch with their coffee, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of fire. The town had heard about their engagement. News traveled fast in Red Hollow, and people had been stopping by all day with congratulations and gifts they could barely afford. Eggs, preserves, a quilt Martha Johnson had sewn from fabric scraps. Small offerings that meant everything. "Your sign needs updating," Eliza said, gesturing to the gate. Cole looked at it. Hart Ranch. Established 1880. Still standing. "What should it say?" "Hart Drayton Ranch. Established 1880. Still standing. Still growing." She smiled. "What do you think?" "I think Samuel would approve." "Yeah, I think so too." They rocked in comfortable silence, the rhythm of the chairs matching like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. In the distance, Eliza could see lights appearing in Red Hollow as people lit their evening lamps, the community they'd fought for, The community that had fought back. Marshal Grant says the trial starts in 6 months, Cole said. We'll have to testify, probably be there for weeks. We'll manage. We always do. Eliza took his hand. Besides, we're not alone anymore. The Johnsons can watch the place. Webb will keep an eye on things. We have people now. Yes, we have people. Cole squeezed her fingers. Strange how that happened. A few months ago I had money and assets and no one I could trust. Now I have nothing but this place and you and a town full of people who'd fight beside us. And somehow, that feels like more. It is more. It's everything that matters. The stars emerged one by one as they sat there, making plans and dreaming futures and savoring the simple miracle of not being alone. The coyotes started their evening song, wild and lonesome and beautiful. And on a rise overlooking the western pasture, a cottonwood tree grew beside a simple wooden cross, shading a promise kept and a new promise just beginning. 6 months later, on a morning bright with autumn sun, Eliza Hart and Cole Drayton stood before a justice of the peace in the Red Hollow courthouse and spoke vows that bound them legally and spiritually and every way that mattered. Martha Johnson stood as witness. Thomas Webb gave the bride away, since she had no family left to do it. The whole town turned out, cramming into the small courthouse until people spilled out onto the steps. When the justice pronounced them married, Cole kissed his bride with an enthusiasm that made the crowd laugh and cheer. And Eliza, who'd thought her heart had died with Samuel, felt it beating strong and sure against her ribs, not replacing what she'd lost. Nothing could do that, but building something new alongside it, something just as real and just as precious. They honeymooned at the ranch because neither of them wanted to be anywhere else. Cole spent his days learning to farm, making mistakes, and laughing at them, finding joy in simple work done with his hands. Eliza taught him everything Samuel had taught her: how to read the weather, how to coax life from stubborn soil, how to care for animals and land, and the delicate balance between the two. In the evenings, they sat on the porch and talked about expansion, about buying adjacent parcels as they came available, about building a real ranch operation based on fair wages and sustainable grazing and treating land like a trust instead of a resource to be exploited, about creating something that would last beyond them. We'll need hands eventually, Cole said one night. People to help with the cattle and the farming, good people. I know some. Families from town who need work, people Brennan displaced who want to come back. Eliza rested her head on his shoulder. We'll build it slow. Build it right. The Hart Drayton way. Exactly. The trial happened that winter. Brennan was convicted on 17 counts of fraud and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison, his assets seized and liquidated to pay restitution to victims. Talmadge got 5 years for his cooperation. Pike was never found, disappearing into the kind of anonymity that criminals sometimes achieved when they ran far enough and fast enough. The conviction sent shockwaves through land offices across the territory. Officials who'd been taking bribes suddenly became very interested in honest work. Shell companies dissolved. Fraudulent reassessments were reviewed and overturned. And slowly, painfully, the machinery of justice began to grind out something that looked like fairness. It wasn't perfect. Nothing involving humans ever was. But it was better. And better was enough to build on. 5 years after that first storm brought a stranger to her door, Eliza stood in her kitchen, expanded now, with new windows and a proper stove, and watched her husband teaching their 3-year-old daughter how to collect eggs. The little girl, named Sarah for Samuel and for new beginnings, squealed with delight every time a hen clucked at her. The ranch had grown, 200 acres now, with plans for more. They ran a modest cattle operation and grew wheat for the mill in Red Hollow. They employed 6 hands, all local people who'd lost everything to Brennan's schemes and found new starts here. It wasn't an empire, but it was honest. It was real. It was theirs. Martha Johnson knocked on the doorframe, balancing a basket of bread. Brought you some sourdough. Thought you might be running low. You're a saint. Come in. Have coffee. They sat at the kitchen table, 2 women who'd survived hardship and found strength in each other's company. Through the window, they could see Cole swinging Sarah onto his shoulders, making her laugh with delight. He's good with her, Martha said. He's good with everything. Still don't know what I did to deserve him. Eliza poured coffee. How's your place coming? Good. John thinks we can add another room next spring, maybe even hire our own hand, Martha smiled. Strange to think 5 years ago we had nothing, and now we have everything that matters. Exactly. They sipped their coffee and watched the men work in the fields and listened to Sarah's laughter carry on the wind. Outside, the sign by the gate had weathered some, but the words were still clear. Hart Drayton Ranch. Established 1880, still standing, still growing. That night, after Sarah was asleep and the hands had gone to their bunks and the evening chores were done, Eliza and Cole sat on the porch with their coffee. The same ritual they'd started months ago, now worn smooth by repetition until it felt as essential as breathing. I was thinking, Cole said, about the future. Always dangerous when you think too much. Hush. I'm being serious. He set down his cup. We've built something good here, something worth protecting, and I want to make sure it lasts beyond us, beyond Sarah. I want to put it in writing, make the ranch a cooperative that can't be sold or broken up, that has to be run by people who actually work the land, not investors or corporations. Eliza considered this. You mean like what we helped set up for Red Hollow? Exactly like that, but bigger. A model that could be used by other ranches, other communities, something that protects against the next Brennan. Cole turned to face her. We fought for this place. We almost died for it. I want to make sure no one can take it away, not from our children or their children or anyone who comes after. Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. That's perfect. That's exactly what Samuel would have wanted, not just keeping the land, but making sure it stays with people who'll care for it. We'll need lawyers, legal documents. It won't be cheap. We'll manage. We always do. She took his hand. 5 years ago, I was drowning, barely surviving, waiting to lose everything because I didn't have $47. And now look at us. Building dynasties, planning generations ahead. It's almost funny. It's not funny. It's earned. Cole raised her hand to his lips. You earned it by refusing to quit, by showing kindness to a stranger, by being stubborn enough to fight when anyone sensible would have folded. We earned it. Together. Together, he agreed. They sat there as the stars emerged, one by one, filling the sky with cold fire. The same stars that had shone the night they met, the same stars that would shine long after they were gone, watching over whatever came next. Inside, Sarah stirred in her sleep and called out. Eliza went to her, soothing her back to dreams, and when she returned, Cole had made fresh coffee and was sketching ideas for the cooperative on the back of an old receipt. This was life now. Not dramatic or desperate, just good, just real, just two people who'd found each other in the storm and decided to build something that would outlast them both. I love you, Eliza said. Cole looked up from his sketches and smiled. I love you too. Every stubborn, impossible, beautiful part of you. Even the part that killed a man and didn't lose sleep over it? Especially that part. Reminds me you're strong enough to survive anything. He set down his pencil. Come here. She went to him and he pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her, and they sat like that for a while. Just being, just breathing, just grateful for the simple miracle of having found each other. Years would pass. Sarah would grow and have siblings. The ranch would expand and prosper and face new challenges. Droughts would come and be survived. Markets would crash and recover. Life would continue in all its messy, complicated, beautiful chaos. But this moment, sitting on a porch in West Texas with coffee going cold and stars overhead, and the person you loved most in the world holding you like you were precious, this moment would remain, fixed in memory, perfect and complete. And on a rise overlooking the western pasture, beneath a cottonwood tree that had grown tall and strong, a simple wooden cross stood beside a newer stone marker. Samuel Hart and Eliza Hart Drayton, it would one day read, beloved parents and partners. They kept their promises, but that was years away, decades away. For now there was just the night and the stars and the sound of two rockers moving in rhythm on a porch, two cups sitting side by side, two hearts beating in time, still standing, still growing, still together. And that in the end was everything.